Gu Ning turned her cold look at the beautician. The latter felt as if there was a sharp knife around her neck, and she could be killed at any second. She was left cold and trembling. This young girl's look was so harsh and terrifying. Gu Ning ignored the beautician's feelings but questioned, "Is this the way you serve your customers? You're snobbish and selfish." Then she pointed at the calligraphy on the wall. Credit-based, customer first, sincere communication and equal intention. Are these lies? Hearing that, everyone criticized the beautician. The beautician immediately retorted, "Miss, please don't damage our reputation." No one was willing to come into a place where the workers were snobbish and selfish. If it went abroad, their saloon would be greatly affected. The beautician knew that her attitude wasn't right, but she was afraid of Mrs. Wu. She thought that Gu Ning would be the same. Unexpectedly, Gu Ning wouldn't yield to power or money. "Is it me? Or are you damaging the reputation of this saloon? Who is the snobbish one? Because of this, Mrs. Wu, you forced other customers to leave this private room." Gu Ning asked. "Exactly. It's her fault. How can she blame the young girl? She's shameless." "I agree. I had a great impression of their service attitude here, but it seems I'm wrong. I'm so disappointed. I won't come here anymore. I don't want to be cleared out all of a sudden, only because a rich missus comes." Some of the customers around them were annoyed as well. There weren't many rich women like Mrs. Wu, so most of them disliked the rich. The beautician was helpless now. She knew that she was causing more trouble. "If this Mrs. Wu comes again, I won't be coming here anymore," a woman said. Hearing that, Mrs. Wu was mad. "Why? You don't own this salon. Why can't I come? I think you all are just jealous of my wealth." Mrs. Wu hit the point and the women all shut up. They of course wouldn't admit it. However, before they could argue back, Gu Ning opened her mouth. "If you're rich enough, buy this salon right now." Gu Ning challenged her. "You?" Mrs. Wu didn't know what to say. In fact, she didn't have much money. From an outsider's perspective, she lived an affluent life, but her husband wasn't generous at all. He only gave her a monthly allowance of 100,000 yuan. She needed skincare, clothing, and jewelry. She could only save a few dozen thousand yuan every month, and her savings merely amounted to several 100,000 yuan in all. However, this beauty salon cost at least a few million yuan. She really could not afford it. Before long, Mrs. Wu retorted, "Well, why don't you buy it yourself?" "I'm willing to, as long as the boss sells it to me," Gu Ning answered seriously. Gu Ning thought that it wasn't a bad idea to buy this beauty salon for Gu Man and Gu Qing to run. They didn't need to manage it themselves. They only needed to be in charge of the accounts. Of course, as long as the boss of this beauty salon sold it to Gu Ning. When they had registered for the VIP card, Gu Ning had found out that this beauty salon was a private company. It provided high-end service and products, so their customer group wasn't large. But a single VIP customer spent 10 times more money than a common customer in one go. The business was profitable, although not very popular. Ning Ning. Both Gu Man and Gu Qing were astonished. They didn't want Gu Ning to make decisions without thorough thought. Mrs. Wu and others were also shocked. What? This young girl was going to buy this beauty salon? Was she kidding? This beauty salon cost at least a few million yuan. Could she afford it? No one believed that Gu Ning was able to do that. "Do you really want to acquire it?" At that time, a female voice sounded from behind the crowd. Before long, a woman in her early 30s walked inside. Her body was attractive. She was tall and slim, having the air of elegance and sexiness alike. She wasn't plain with such smooth, flawless skin. Her bright eyes were full of wisdom and confidence. She didn't show any disdain while she was asking Gu Ning the question, even though Gu Ning was just a young girl. Instead, she treated Gu Ning equally. "Be boss." Seeing the woman, all the beauticians' faces turned pale, especially the one in the rose-red uniform. She could be fired this time. She knew her boss's character clearly. If it hadn't been for Mrs. Wu, she wouldn't have done what she did today. In this beauty salon there were 3 levels of workers. Ordinary beauticians were in pink uniforms. The team leaders were in rose-red uniforms. There were many skincare items such as pure natural professional skincare, pure natural wrinkle anti-aging, massage, ovarian maintenance, aroma, and so forth. Except for those, there were also items for physical health. Not every beautician was able to work with all of the items. They had their strengths from person to person, so they were divided into different teams. Above the team leaders was the managers. The managers wore white uniforms. Coincidentally, the manager on duty today had asked for a leave. Otherwise, such a mess wouldn't have happened. The female boss ignored her staff but looked at Guning asking again. "Miss, so nice to meet you. I'm the boss of this beauty salon, you know. Are you sure you want to acquire my salon? Are you willing to sell it?" Guning asked. "If you want to buy it, I'll sell it," Yuna replied with sincerity. "Sure, I'll buy it," Guning answered with alacrity. Everyone was shocked by the fact that Guning was really going to buy this place. Ning Ning. Both Gu Man and Gu Qing were genuinely surprised. They wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. They believed that Gu Ning wasn't an impulsive person. Since she planned to buy it, she must be doing it for a reason. Mom, Aunt, don't you want to run a business? This beauty salon is yours from now on. You don't need to spend much time running it, but just take control of the management and accounts, Guning said. Everyone around them looked at Gu Man and Gu Qing in an envious way. Gu Man and Gu Qing were greatly touched. Although they thought it was too much, they accepted it happily. "How much is it?" Guning asked the boss. "To be honest with you, I'll be immigrating to country Y in a few months, and I already had the intention to sell this salon. I've dealt with all the details. It's worth 3.2 million yuan including everything in this place," Yuna said. She took out the list and the contract from her bag, handing them to Guning. "This is the list. You can check all the objects first. If you don't have any questions, we can sign the contract before we go to the relative departments to finish the legal procedure." "Sure." Guning took the list and the contract, but she didn't review them at once. "I think we better solve the problem we have right now. How do you want to handle it?" Yuna asked. "Since I've decided to acquire this beauty salon, I think I have the power to make some decisions, right?" Guning asked. "Of course," Yuna replied. "Very well, first, this Mrs. Wu's membership must be cancelled, and this beautician is fired. I won't allow snobbish people to work in my store," Guning said in an undeniable way. The rest all respected her unconsciously. Although the beautician was reluctant to be fired, she understood that it was too late to make up for it. However, Mrs. Wu wasn't happy about that decision. She questioned in anger. "Why should my membership be cancelled?" "Because I'll be the boss of this beauty salon soon, and I have the power to do so," Guning said. "Even though you're the boss, aren't you afraid that it will damage your reputation that you randomly cancel your customers' membership?" Mrs. Wu reacted swiftly. "That depends on what kind of customer you're. If it's a customer like you who is arrogant and rude, sorry, you're not welcome here," Guning replied calmly, which left a great impression on the others. "You!" Mrs. Wu was mad but didn't know what to say. Li, go take them to do the procedures," Yuna offered. "Who cares? There isn't only one skincare salon anyway." Mrs. Wu was irritated, but she wasn't willing to stay any longer, since Guning would be the boss of it. After Mrs. Wu and the beautician were gone, Guning looked to the crowd saying, "All the staff of Kame Beauty Salon, although I'm not the boss yet, I think it's better to make it clear right now. If you can't meet the principles on the wall, you may quit on your own initiative. Otherwise, you'll be punished once I find that you disobeyed the rules." Her words were powerful and persuasive. No one thought that she was only a young girl, but more of a successful businesswoman. At short notice, everyone admired Gu Ning. Generally speaking, the entire staff here was excellent. Only a few of them were black sheep. Yuna stared at Gu Ning with appreciation. This young girl indeed wasn't ordinary. Of course, as long as you obey the rules, work hard, I won't treat you unfairly on the salary, Gu Ning added. And all the customers here, this is a place that values equality. No matter if you're from the rich or the powerful families, please show some respect to one another. Please treat others the way you want to be treated, Gu Ning said. After a second, Gu Ning continued. After I sign the contract and finish the legal procedure, my mother, Gu Man, and my aunt, Gu Qing, will be the bosses of this beauty salon. Please be aware of that, thanks. Congratulations, all the customers said. They all had a high opinion of what Gu Ning had done today. The mess was cleared, and all the workers went back to work. Gu Ning then brought Gu Man and Gu Qing to check the objects and items on the list and the accounts. Meanwhile, Yuna also reminded the staff in Kamei Beauty Salon to work well. She believed in Gu Ning and hoped that others would do the same thing. Facing Yuna, everyone trusted and agreed with her. With Gu Ning's outstanding ability, she finished all the lists and accounts within half an hour. There was nothing wrong. Yuna was quite surprised by Gu Ning's efficiency. She asked, "Wow, you're so efficient. Is everything right?" "I'm good at reading and memorizing," Gu Ning replied. She wasn't showing off but proved her qualifications at the right time. "You must be an excellent student," Yuna said. "You're right," Gu Ning answered.
Yuna smiled.
She now appreciated Gu Ning more. She must be an extraordinary girl. "All right, it's almost 11 a.m. We need to finish the procedures before the department closes today." Yuna took a look at the clock saying, although it was a Sunday, the Industry and Commerce Bureau and the State Taxation Administration were still open. They went to the Industry and Commerce Bureau to register the property rights change information, and then went to the State Taxation Administration to register the equity information. Yuna knew someone who worked in those two departments, so it was very smooth for them to finish all the processes. They finished it before 12 p.m. The legal entity was Gu Man, accounting for 51% shares. The only shareholder was Gu Qing, accounting for 49% shares. Both Gu Man and Gu Qing felt like they were in a dream even after they had finished the processes. It was too good to be true. From now on, they were the bosses of this beauty salon. It happened too fast for them to react. "What we've done today is the only case I've settled so quickly. Thank you, Miss Gu," Yuna said to Gu Ning. It wasn't easy to meet a buyer like Gu Ning who readily agreed to settle a deal. Other buyers would normally try their best to bargain. Businessmen always value benefits most. Although Gu Ning agreed to buy this saloon without delay, Yuna didn't think that she knew nothing about this business. Gu Ning was a generous person herself. "Miss Yu, I should thank you for your help. I need this salon too," Gu Ning replied. "It's 12 p.m. now. We need to celebrate the deal today. Why don't we go have lunch together?" "It's on me."
Yuna invited.
Great. Gu Ning didn't hesitate but agreed with alacrity. After the meal, they said goodbye to each other. Gu Man and Gu Qing went back to the beauty salon to get familiar with this business. Gu Ning, of course, followed them back. Yuna told Gu Ning and her family that most of the staff who worked in Kamei Beauty Salon were nice people, except for a few of them who were snobbish. Yuna wasn't sure that they would obey the rules, so she reminded Gu Ning to pay more attention to them. Kamei Beauty Salon belonged to Gu Man and Gu Qing now, thus they needed to take care of it themselves. Gu Man was always mild and too kind. Gu Ning was worried that she wouldn't dare to criticize the staff if they did something wrong. Therefore, Gu Ning persuaded her mother to be strict when it was necessary. If your staff wasn't scared of you at all, the team couldn't work efficiently. Gu Ning also told her mother not to hesitate to ask her for help if she needed it. Gu Ning and her family left the beauty salon 2 hours later. But they didn't go back home. They went to a shopping mall instead. Since Gu Man and Gu Qing were starting to run a business, they couldn't dress too casually. Gu Ning planned to buy them several formal suits. Each of them bought 3 professional suits and skirts matched with high heels and handbags. They spent around 100,000 yuan on it. Gu Man and Gu Qing were reluctant to spend that much money on clothing, but it was necessary for work, so they agreed to do so. The minute Gu Ning and her family got home, her phone rang. The caller was Yu Mixi.
Hi, Mitzi, Kuningside.
Yu Mixi wept. Ning Ning, please help me. My mother fainted. There is a tumor in her brain. They said that she needs a surgical removal right now, but the fee is almost 200,000 yuan. My family can't afford it. Can you lend me some money? Gu Ning was Yu Mixi's only hope. Her family's savings amounted to a few dozen thousand yuan at the most. It was definitely not enough. What? Which hospital are you in right now? Gu Ning immediately asked. The number 3 hospital. We're in patient room number 510 in the inpatient department. Yu Mixi answered. Don't worry. I'll be right there, Gu Ning said. She hung up and went out right away. Gu Ning was lucky enough to get on a taxi the minute she left Fenghua Luxury Mansion. But the number 3 hospital was a little far away. It took at least 30 minutes to get there. Gu Ning was afraid to delay the treatment time of Yu Mixi's mother, so she called her friends for help at once. Gu Ning took out her phone calling Chu Peihan. Hi Gu Ning. The person who answered the call wasn't Chu Peihan but Chu Xianfeng. Peihan isn't. Before Chu Xianfeng could finish, he was interrupted by Gu Ning. I'm calling for you. What? Chu Xianfeng was surprised. Gu Ning added, do you know anyone who works in the number 3 hospital? Yu Mixi's mother passed out. There is a tumor in her brain, and she needs surgical removal right now. Yu Mixi's family doesn't have much money, so they aren't able to pay for the surgery. I'm on the way to the hospital now, but I can't get there until at least 30 minutes later. I don't want Yu Mixi's mother to wait for the surgery. Could you please help me let Yu Mixi's mother do the surgery first? I'll pay for it the minute I arrive. Of course, what's her mother's name? Chu Xianfeng asked. I don't know, but they are staying in patient room number 510 in the inpatient department. Yu Mixi is there too, Gu Ning replied. Great, let me handle it, Chu Xianfeng said before he hung up. Then he used his phone to call the director of the number 3 hospital. Although Chu Xianfeng served in a gang, he knew almost everyone with a tide. There were also people who served in the Qing gang that worked for the government, but they wouldn't commit any crimes. At that time, the director of the number 3 hospital was just about to get off work. Before he walked out of the hospital, he received Chu Xuanfeng's call. The director respected Chu Xianfeng a lot. Once he heard his request, the director immediately went to arrange it. The second Chu Xianfeng finished the call, Chu Peihan got home. Chu Xianfeng then told her what had happened to Yu Mixi. Chu Peihan was so concerned that she went straight to the hospital without eating. Chu Xianfeng wanted to go with her, but it wouldn't be appropriate if he left Siti alone. Unexpectedly, Siti asked to go with them. Both Chu Xianfeng and Chu Peihan were astonished. Why would Siti, who was the boss of the Qing gang, go to the hospital with them? However, they didn't have much time to think about that. The 3 of them drove to the hospital in a hurry. Siti went to the hospital for Gu Ning without a doubt. It was a great chance. On the way, Chu Xianfeng told Chu Peihan to call Gu Ning and tell her that he had arranged everything. I think we better call Mixi first. She must be super worried, Chu Peihan said. She then called Yu Mixi without delay. Knowing that her mother could get the surgery done soon, Yu Mixi thanked Chu Peihan with great excitement. Yu Mixi told her father the good news afterwards. Yu Mixi's father then found out that his daughter had turned to her friends for help. He was very grateful that Yu Mixi had many rich and kind friends who were willing to help his family. Although he didn't want Yu Mixi to borrow money from her friends, he didn't have another choice. His family was too poor to afford the administration fee. and none of his relatives were willing to lend them money. He didn't want to lose his wife, nor for his daughter to lose her mother. He felt very ashamed that Yumixi had to borrow money from her friends, but he was happier that his wife was saved. Once Yumixi's mother recovered, he would work harder to pay back Yumixi's friend. Chu Peihan called Guning later telling her that the surgery was settled and that Yumixi was already aware of it. Within several minutes, a few doctors appeared in patient room No. 510. The director of this hospital was the leader. "Who is Yumixi?" the director asked. "It's me." Yumixi immediately stood up. Her father was thrilled to see the doctors. "Nice to meet you. I'm the director of the number 3 hospital. I just received a call from Mr. Chu. We need to administer the surgery to your mother right away." Both Yumixi and her father were surprised that the director would come in person, especially Yumixi's father. He didn't expect that his daughter's friend could be so influential. "Thank you so much." Yumixi immediately bowed to the director. Then Yumixi's mother was pushed into the operating room. Yumixi and her father were waiting outside, but they weren't fully relieved yet, because the result was unknown. 30 minutes later, Guning met Chu Xianfeng and the others by accident at the door of the hospital. They went to the operating room together. "Ningning, you're finally here." Seeing that Guning was here, Yumixi immediately ran to her arms crying. She had been depressed for a long time, but didn't dare to show her feelings. She didn't want to upset her father, so she pretended to be strong. However, when Guning appeared in her sight, she failed to pretend any longer. There, it'll be fine." Guning comforted, secretly giving Yumixi her power, in case she fainted too. Yumixi's father didn't know what to do seeing Guning and her friends, because he had no idea who the one that had helped his family was. Yumixi, meanwhile, was busy crying, and forgot to introduce them to her father. Yumixi's father understood that Yumixi was unhappy, and needed to vent her depression, so he didn't stop her. Luckily, Yumixi calmed down soon because of Guning's power. "Let's go pay the bill," Guning said. "Let me handle it."
Chu Sunfen interrupt.
Around 200,000 yuan was nothing to him. Most importantly, Yumixi was Chu Peihan's friend too. Although he wasn't an altruist, he was willing to help his younger sister's friend. "Yes, please allow us to do that for Mixi," Chu Peihan added. "No, I must pay it this time," Guning said in an undeniable tone. Yumixi had turned to her at the very beginning for a reason, because they were closest friends. It would be less stressful for her to ask for help from Guning. In addition, Yumixi was used to depending on Guning, so Guning decided to be her strong support. Seeing Guning being so determined, they knew that there was no room to argue with her, so they didn't insist. "Thank you so much." Yumixi's father almost cried with tears in his eyes. He even wanted to bend on his knees for Guning. Guning immediately stopped him. "Please don't do that. I don't know how to thank you enough for lending us money. I promise I'll try my best to pay you back as soon as I can," Yumixi's father said. His wife was in danger. He didn't care that it was embarrassing to borrow money from a teenage girl. "Please don't worry about that. As long as Mixi's mother can recover, I can wait." Guning actually had no intention to let them pay her back, but she didn't want to hurt Yumixi's father's dignity. After that, Yumixi along with Guning went to pay the bill. Although for the sake of Chu Xianfeng, the director arranged the best doctor and a VIP patient room for Yumixi's mother, he didn't own this hospital after all, so it was impossible to get free medical treatment. They wouldn't have the final bill before Yumixi's mother left the hospital, so Guning paid 200,000 yuan at first. "Ningning, I honestly don't know how to thank you. I promise we'll pay you back as soon as possible," Yumixi said to Guning. "Mixi, you don't need to pay me back," Guning said to Yumixi. "What?" No, Yumixi was shocked. She couldn't accept it. She was already quite thankful that Guning was willing to lend her money. How could she not pay her back? It was 200,000 yuan, not 20 or 200 yuan. "Mixi, you told me your dream job is to be an accountant, right?" Guning asked. Yumixi didn't understand why Guning suddenly changed the topic, but answered, "Yes. Good, let me tell you this. I'm going to start a business, and I need a person who I can trust to be my accountant in the future. Will you help me? If you're willing to, the 200,000 yuan will be your advance," Guning said with sincerity. That wasn't the reason that Yumixi could not pay her back, but Guning already had the idea of hiring Yumixi. She did this on purpose to comfort Yumixi. If Yumixi was willing to help her, it would be so much better. She was excellent at math and calculating. Once she gained more knowledge about accounting, Guning believed that she would be an outstanding assistant. To win a person's loyalty, one could give her or him the best treatment, but the best way was to always let her or him be grateful to you. Unless the person changed in the future and betrayed the one who had helped her or him. Guning wasn't 100% sure that Yumixi wouldn't change in the future, but at least she was more trustworthy than others. What? Hearing that, Yumixi was stunned. Guning was going to start a business? No matter whether Guning could be successful, Yumixi was of course willing to aid her. Moreover, Yumixi believed without a doubt that Guning could make it. She was so perfect in every aspect. Thus, Yumixi replied with determination, "I will." Now, Yumixi was even more interested in an accounting major. She made up her mind to study harder so that she was able to help Guning in the future. Guning and Yumixi went back to the operating room. She said to Chu Xianfeng and the rest people, "Why don't you go back now? I can take care of it." The surgery could last for a long time. It wasn't appropriate to let them wait together. They all had their business to deal with after all. "Yeah, the surgery won't end within a short time. Please don't waste your time here. Thank you so much for your help today," Yumixi's father added. He was the one who would feel the guiltiest if they all waited here. "I won't leave," Chu Peihan said. She didn't pay the bill and she won't leave now. She wanted to stay and keep Yumixi's company. "Oh, I already told Hao Ran and others. They'll be here soon." In Chu Peihan's eyes, they were all close friends, so she had to tell them. They were so supportive. If she didn't tell them, they would be mad if they found out later. Guning didn't say anything. It wasn't a bad thing, but Yumixi was a little embarrassed, because she knew the boys wouldn't come with empty hands. Since they would come, Yumixi couldn't stop them. They were good friends anyway. Chu Xianfeng couldn't make the decision himself. He looked to Sitiyi. "Let's wait for a while," Sitiyi said. Both Chu Xianfeng and Chu Peihan were greatly astonished. Since when had Sitiyi become so kind and gentle? In fact, Sitiyi intended to spend more time with Guning to impress her. Since they said that they were staying, Yumixi's father didn't insist. 30 minutes later, the surgery was still going on. Chu Xianfeng received a call and left afterwards to deal with his business. Chu Xianfeng was going to leave, and it wouldn't be appropriate if Sitiyi stayed. Thus they left together, even though Sitiyi was reluctant to do so. He had no excuse to stay after all. A while later, Hao Ran and the boys arrived in 2s and 3s with many bags of nourishing products, which shocked Yumixi and her father. Yumixi was fine with it, because she had witnessed it once when they had come to visit Guman. But her father had never seen so many gifts at a time. Why were all of Mixi's friends are from good families? Yumixi's father was slightly worried. He was afraid that his daughter made those friends for advantages. However, he didn't show his worry. He kept thanking them for their kindness. 20 minutes later, the light went off in the operating room, which meant that the surgery was over. A group of them ran ahead at once. The door was opened and the doctor stepped out. "Doctor, how's my wife? Doctor, how's my mother?" Yumixi and her father asked with anxiety. "The surgery is a great success. She'll wake up when the anesthetic wears off," the doctor replied. Everyone was relieved. They then pushed the patient back to the patient room. Guning let Hao Ran and Qin Zixuan buy some food for Yumixi and her parents when they arrived at the VIP patient room. Yumixi's father immediately stopped them. He didn't want to bother them further. Instead, he planned to let Yumixi invite them to have a meal to thank them, but Guning declined. Gu Ning persuaded Yu Mixie's father to focus on taking care of Yu Mixie's mother. Yu Mixie's mother for now was the one who needed care the most after all. Yu Mixie's father listened to Gu Ning in the end. Hao Ran and Qin Zixuan of course followed Gu Ning's order. At that time, Gu Ning walked to the side of Yu Mixie's mother's bed. She used her jade eyes to check her physical condition. Gu Ning had absorbed a large amount of power, and she was already able to cure the human body to some extent with her power, but for severe injuries her power still wasn't enough. The tumor was already removed from Yu Mixie's mother's head. The only injury she had was the cut left by the surgery. Gu Ning administered some power, a light white fog that ordinary people couldn't see, into the cut to only cure the flesh inside, to prevent someone from finding out. Outside the cut remained the same, but it wouldn't affect the inside part anymore. It didn't cost much power to do so, so Gu Ning continued to check Yu Mixie's mother's body to see what else she could do. She was willing to do more for her friend. It was good that Gu Ning did, because Yu Mixie's mother's stomach was already festering, which was probably the reason why she had been frail and sick for so many years. Gu Ning immediately used her power to cure the damaged stomach. This time she spent a lot of power, and felt a little tired afterwards. Luckily, there was still half of her power left. No one noticed what she was doing because it happened too fast. Half an hour later, the two boys got back with the food. Gu Ning and others didn't stay long before they left. Gu Ning had planned to do her scavenger hunt at the Yuntai Mountain today, but it was too late, so she gave it up. When Gu Ning and the boys were gone, Yu Mixie told her father what Gu Ning had discussed with her. She didn't want her father to be worried about her mother's health as well as the money. Yu Mixie's father was stunned to hear the news. To his astonishment, Gu Ning was able to start a business at such a young age. Although Gu Ning did so, he still felt like he had to do something. However, his family was too poor to pay the money back. Thus Yu Mixie's father could only reminded Yu Mixie to study hard, so that she could help Gu Ning in the future. Gu Ning had saved her mother's life after all. If Gu Ning hadn't come to their aid, Yu Mixie's mother could only have waited to die. The next day, Gu Ning saw Leng Xiaoting in a black suit waiting for her not far away, just as she just left Zone G. Leng Xiaoting's sudden presence surprised Gu Ning, but she was also slightly thrilled. Why is he here? What is he doing here? Is he here for me? Why is he coming to me? A series of questions flashed by Gu Ning's mind. She suddenly realized that she was still mad at him. Therefore, she ignored him walking straight by him. Leng Xiaoting was a little upset and nervous. He immediately stopped her. Wait. Gu Ning wanted to continue walking ahead, but in the end she stopped. What? I believe that you're too young to fall in love now. You should focus more on your studies, Leng Xiaoting said. He was anxious. What? Gu Ning was annoyed. He comes here to remind me to stay away from romance just because I'm young? How can he do that? Gu Ning turned around, raising her voice, and shouted at him. It's none of your business if I'm in love. Who do you think you are? Mind yourself first, please. I heard that you have never even had a girlfriend. Are you a gay or something? After that, Gu Ning directly walked fast away. Leng Xiaoting was struck dumb. He didn't understand why Gu Ning was so irritated. He did this for her good. He indeed had never ever had a girlfriend because there was no woman who could walk into his heart, but he wasn't a gay either. In case Gu Ning misunderstood, Leng Xiaoting caught her up at once. I'm not a gay. I don't care, Gu Ning replied in anger. I'm really not a gay, Leng Xiaoting continued to explain. I told you I don't care, Gu Ning said. She stopped all of a sudden but didn't expect that Leng Xiaoting was right behind her. He hit Gu Ning's back unexpectedly. Ah! Gu Ning lost her balance, falling forward. Luckily, with his outstanding agility, Leng Xiaoting grabbed her waist, pulling her backwards. Gu Ning's back once again hit Leng Xiaoting's muscular chest, and she accidentally touched the man's sensitive part. It reacted even. Both of them changed their faces. Although Gu Ning had been with Qi Ziyue for 4 years in her previous incarnation, they had never slept together. So Gu Ning was still a virgin. As for Leng Xiaoting, he was absolutely a virgin too. Leng Xiaoting was turned on and felt sexually excited now. He needed a cold bath right away. Before Gu Ning realized it, Leng Xiaoting let her go and started running away. There was no need for him to explain whether he was gay or not, because his reaction proved everything. At the same time, Gu Ning finally realized what had just happened. She ran out of Fenghua luxury mansion and to her school in a hurry. Her heart was in her throat now. She felt embarrassed and excited, and kept blaming Leng Xiaoting in her heart. If he hadn't knocked into her, it wouldn't have happened, but it wasn't actually Leng Xiaoting's fault. If she hadn't stopped all of a sudden, Leng Xiaoting wouldn't have knocked into her. He didn't want it to happen either. When Gu Ning got to school, she had almost calmed herself down. She went to the football field. Mixi was there as well. Gu Ning asked, "Mixi, is your mother awake?" Mixi looked a little pale but beamed. "My mother woke up around 12 p.m. The doctor said my mother recovered very well. She can leave the hospital after a week. I was too happy to remember to send a message into our WeChat group to share the good news with you all." "It's fine and I'm happy to hear it too," Gu Ning said. "Ning, I told my father about what we spoke about. My father is also supporting me to study hard and help you in the future," Mixi said. "Great. Don't let me down," Gu Ning encouraged her. "I won't." Mixi was full of hope now. She promised that she would never disappoint Gu Ning. "What are you talking about?" Chu Peihan, who stood not far away, noticed that they were talking about something, but didn't hear it clearly. She immediately approached them. "We're discussing that someone's birthday is just around the corner. What gifts should we send?" Gu Ning pretended as if she was thinking. She wanted to keep it a secret between Mixi and her for now. "Someone's birthday? Who?" Chu Peihan was excited at once. Birthdays meant a party was also around the corner. Whose birthday? Hao Ran and the boys came near too. If it was their friend's birthday, they of course must celebrate it. Gu Ning rolled her eyes looking at Chu Peihan. "I think the answer is pretty clear." Chu Peihan was struck dumb for a second before she realized that her birthday was only half a month away. She forgot her own birthday. Chu Peihan was a little embarrassed, but she became thrilled the next second. "Ah! My birthday is half a month away. How could I forget about it? Boss, how did you know?" "I don't think I told you that." Chu Peihan was curious. "You didn't tell me, but I saw it. When we went to register for a room last time, I noticed your ID card," Gu Ning said. "What?" Hearing that, not only Chu Peihan, but the rest were also shocked. What an outstanding memory Gu Ning had. Nevertheless, in their eyes, Gu Ning was a goddess, so they gradually grew accustomed to finding out about her unusual abilities. "Boss, that's incredible. I must invite you all to have a luxurious meal and throw a great party. As for the gifts, I don't care," Chu Peihan said. "Well, I was considering preparing a valuable gift for you, but since you said so, I'm fine with that. I can save a lot of money," Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Chu Peihan couldn't remain calm. She argued at once. "Boss, I was just saying that. Please don't take it seriously." Everyone burst into laughter. In Fenghua Luxury Mansion, Leng Xiaoting sat on the sofa thinking, after a cold bath in Su Jinshan's place. Because of his unexpected physiological response, he was growingly clear about his feelings towards Gu Ning. He had never loved a woman, so he wasn't sure whether he had indeed fallen in love with Gu Ning, but he was certain that he felt disappointed to see her being unhappy, so he had even let her keep the gun, which was illegal. When Su Jinshan had told him that he was going to chase Gu Ning, Leng Xiaoting had been displeased. Thus he had deliberately forced Su Jinshan to go on the task together with him to prevent them from getting closer to each other. When Gu Ning had given him a hint that she probably liked him, his heart had beat so fast and he had stayed awake all night. When Gu Ning had told him someone wanted her to be his girlfriend, Ling Xiaoting felt extremely uncomfortable. He had to stop her. That was the reason why he had flown all the way back to City F. When thinking of her, he felt relaxed and sweet for no reason. Perhaps he had indeed fallen in love with Gu Ning. An abrupt ringtone interrupted Ling Xiaoting's thoughts. He was a little displeased, but still answered the call. It was from Su Jinshin. The minute Ling Xiaoting answered it, Su Jinshin opened his mouth. "Hey boss, where are you now?" "What's up?" Ling Xiaoting asked. "Nothing, I just feel that I have nothing to do right now, and I wanted to tell you that I'm going to find the girl that I like. I'd hate to go on a blind date arranged by my family," Su Jinshin complained. The girl he liked? All of a sudden, Ling Xiaoting remembered that Su Jinshin had told him before that he wanted to chase Gu Ning. Ling Xiaoting immediately thought that Su Jinshin was going to find Gu Ning, so he strongly disagreed without hesitation. "You can't do that." "What? Why?" Su Jinshin was a little dumbstruck. "You have to wait until I get back," Ling Xiaoting said. "Then when will you be back?" Su Jinshin asked. "Soon." However, exactly how soon he would be back was totally dependent on him. This wasn't the first time that Su Jinshin had been deceived by his boss. At noon, Zhou Zhenghang sent Gu Ning a message with a picture. It was the advertisement photo of the Jade Beauty jewelry store. Zhou Zhenghang was asking for Gu Ning's opinion. If it wasn't good enough, they still had time to alter it. If Gu Ning was satisfied with it, they could print it out right now for promotion. Gu Ning looked at it for a while and she liked it. Zhou Zhenghang then went to print it. The afternoon classes were finally over, except for Mu Ku and An Yi who still had to attend the evening class. The rest of them left the school together. Yu Mixi needed to visit her mother in the hospital, so she had asked for a leave from Toadie's evening class. After they said goodbye to one another, Gu Ning walked towards her home. She planned to run back home when there were fewer people around. However, before long, a black Maserati stopped right by her side. The window of the back seat was rolled down. It was Sitiyi. "Get in, let me drive you home," Sitiyi said. "No thanks. I'm used to running home," Gu Ning declined. "This is my first time driving a person home on my own initiative. Please do me a favor," Sitiyi added. Since Sitiyi said so, Gu Ning didn't want to hurt his feelings, so she got in. However, the men who sat in the driver's seat and the passenger seat were shocked. Since when had their boss become so kind and gentle? "Let's go to Fenghua Luxury Mansion," Sitiyi ordered. Hearing Sitiye's voice, the driver immediately drove the car towards Fenghua Luxury Mansion. No one noticed that there was a black Land Rover stopped not far away from Sitiye's Maserati, and the man sitting inside fixed his eyes on Gu Ning from the beginning to the end. Seeing that Gu Ning sat in Sitiye's car and left, the look became cold and upset. The man was Ling Xiaoting. Ling Xiaoting finally figured out that he already fallen in love with Gu Ning, so he came to her. But unexpectedly he was too late. He didn't know who the owner of the car was. Thus he could only follow them along the way. At the same time, Sitiyi was talking with Gu Ning once in a while in the car. When they almost arrived at Fenghua Luxury Mansion, Sitiyi wanted to exchange numbers with Gu Ning. He told Gu Ning that if she encountered any trouble in City G, she was free to turn to him for help, and he had a network in gangs and government alike. The two fellows who sat in the front were shocked again. Since when had their boss become so helpful and altruistic? However, after the shock, they didn't dare to let their mind wander. It would be terrible if any accident happened. Gu Ning of course wouldn't deny it. She was in need of help. Gu Ning used to suspect that the man had some connection with the Qing gang. Now that Sitiyi said it himself, Gu Ning was more certain that he must be closely connected with the Qing gang. If you ever annoyed the gangs, you could only fight against them with your life. Therefore, it was very important to build up a network. Gu Ning got out of the car at Fenghua Luxury Mansion. She thanked Sitiyi before she walked inside. However, Situye's car didn't leave right away. He rolled down the window watching Gu Ning leaving. Exactly because of that, Leng Xiaoting saw the men in the car while he went by. Another car stopped by Gu Ning's side when she walked halfway. A man got out of it. It was Leng Xiaoting. Seeing Leng Xiaoting, Gu Ning immediately thought of what had happened this morning. She was a little nervous, but the next second she changed her face. Leng Xiaoting questioned her directly. Is the man who wanted you to be his girlfriend the same man who just drove you back? Gu Ning was unhappy that Leng Xiaoting talked to her in that way. She felt offended. I don't think it has anything to do with you. It's none of your business.
Gu Ning said.
Gu Ning's attitude made Leng Xiaoting believe that he guessed correctly, so he continued to persuade her. You don't match. He is a dangerous man. Gu Ning frowned a little. Leng Xiaoting must know him. She was getting curious. Why is he dangerous? Do you know his real identity? He's Situye, the boss of the Qing gang, Leng Xiaoting answered. His voice showed apparent dislike towards the Qing gang. What? Gu Ning was stunned. She had assumed that the man must be closely connected with the Qing gang, but unexpectedly, he was the boss. After hearing Situye's real identity, Gu Ning thought that it was a good news instead. The boss of the Qing gang. Not bad. Then he'll be able to solve any problem within a second, Gu Ning said in a proud tone. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was displeased. He retorted, I can help you too, and I'm better than him. This was the first time Leng Xiaoting had complimented himself before others. Gu Ning was surprised. She knew that Leng Xiaoting wasn't bragging. She had had a fight with Leng Xiaoting and Situye separately, and it was true that Leng Xiaoting was better than Situye. But a lone wolf couldn't beat a group of wolves. It's essential to have a strong team too. Leng Xiaoting hated to see that Gu Ning admired Situye, but doubted him. He felt hurt. I can't tell you my real identity right now, but I promise no matter what he can do, I can do better than him, Leng Xiaoting said with confidence. Gu Ning didn't find out about Leng Xiaoting's pride until now. She wasn't dumb, and she knew what was on Leng Xiaoting's mind from his attitude. Oh really? Nevertheless, I don't think that matters to me, Gu Ning said on purpose, although she was thrilled in her heart. I can help you, Leng Xiaoting said. Why are you willing to help me? We aren't close anyway, Gu Ning replied. We can be, Leng Xiaoting said. Be what?
Gu Ning said.
We can be close, Leng Xiaoting said. How close can we be? Gu Ning continued. Leng Xiaoting suddenly stopped and flushed. He was lost for words. Fine, I think I better not bother you. Gu Ning turned around to leave. Leng Xiaoting was so nervous that he blurted it out. Would you be my girlfriend? After that, the man felt like his whole face was burning, and his heart was beating fast, but he had already said it aloud. He couldn't take it back. In fact, he wasn't willing to do so either. Gu Ning stopped. Although it wasn't unexpected, it surprised her. She got nervous too and didn't dare to face Leng Xiaoting. It's not up to me, but you. Can you win my heart? Gu Ning forced herself to calm down. She sent Leng Xiaoting a positive message. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting's eyes were aflame with pleasure. He didn't know how to chase a woman, but he could learn, so he responded, I'll try my best. Great, I'll wait, Gu Ning said before she escaped away. Leng Xiaoting stood still for a long while. When he got home, he immediately searched the internet to find out about ways of chasing a girl. Gu Ning went back home with a red face, which astonished Gu Man. Ning, what happened? Your face is so red, Gu Man said, reaching out her hand to touch Gu Ning's forehead to see whether she had a fever.
Mom, I'm fine.
I just ran back, so I feel a little hot, Gu Ning explained immediately, although she didn't believe it herself. Gu Man was relieved, and Gu Ning's forehead wasn't hot, so she believed it. Have a bath now. We'll go to your aunt's place to have the meal. Sure, Gu Ning answered, then stepped into her room. 10 minutes later, Gu Ning finished her bath and walked out in her casual clothes. Gu Ning used her hairdryer to dry her waist-long hair and put it into a bun for convenience. She took her phone and keys, leaving for Gu Qing's home afterwards. Seeing that Jiang Su was home, Gu Ning asked him with care, "Uncle, how is everything going?" "Everything is fine. The construction materials will be delivered tomorrow afternoon. The store is ready to open the day after tomorrow." Jiang Su was apparently happy. "I'm glad to hear that,"
Gu Ning sighed.
Then she walked into the kitchen. Gu Man and Gu Qing were busy cooking. "Mom, Aunt, do you need help?" "Nope, just sit there. The meal will be ready soon," Gu Qing said. "Oh, how is the beauty salon?" Gu Ning asked. "It's going well. We're getting used to running the business," Gu Qing added. "That's good to know."
Gu Ning sighed.
"Where is Xinyu? "In her room. She locked herself in the room after she came back from her school. I don't know why. She won't come out." Gu Qing sounded a little worried. "Let me talk to her," Gu Ning said. She walked to Jiang Xinyue's room and knocked on the door. "Xinyu, it's me. What are you doing in there?" "Nothing," Jiang Xinyue said, but it seemed that she had no intention to come out. Gu Ning was astute enough to notice that Pang Xinyue's voice wasn't right. She was crying, but why? "May I come in?" Gu Ning asked. "Sorry, I'm reading." Jiang Xinyue declined. How can she be so impolite? Does she have to read right now? "Xinyue, come out right now." Gu Qing ran out from the kitchen and raised her voice in anger. "And it's fine. Leave it to me, please." Gu Ning immediately pushed Gu Qing back to the kitchen. Although Gu Ning didn't want to invade others' privacy, Jiang Xinyue obviously wasn't normal. Thus she could only use her jade eyes to see what was going on inside. In the room WUXIA.WORLD.site, Jiang Xinyue was actually sitting in front of her studying desk, but she wasn't reading. She was crying. On her left cheek there was a clear palm mark. To be specific, there were several palm marks added up. Seeing that, Gu Ning's face changed. She understood why Jiang Xinyue wasn't willing to come out. She didn't want anyone to find out about the injury on her face. Gu Ning immediately went to get a bottle of icy drink and sent a message to Jiang Xinyue. "Xinyue, I understand that you don't want you parents to know what has happened, but I can help you. Please open the door and let me in." Jiang Xinyue read the message and hesitated to open the door. After a few seconds, she stood up, opening the door for Gu Ning. Jiang Xinyue let her hair down to cover her left cheek. Gu Ning stood before her, but Jiang Xinyue only called her quietly and kept her head down to avoid her look. Gu Ning walked in and closed the door at once. She locked the door before pulling Jiang Xinyue to the side of her bed. Without saying anything, she used the icy bottle to cover Jiang Xinyue's swollen cheek. Jiang Xinyue moved unconsciously but was stopped by Gu Ning. "If you don't want your parents to know, stay still." Jiang Xinyue didn't dare to move afterward. She was a little afraid of Gu Ning since Gu Ning had changed into a different person. Gu Ning used the icy bottle as a cover. In fact, she was secretly removing the red marks on Jiang Xinyue's face with her power. However, in order not to raise any doubt, Gu Ning let the icy bottle stay on Jiang Xinyue's face for several minutes. "Sister, how did you know?" Jiang Xinyue didn't realize it until now. How could Gu Ning know that her face was injured? "It's not important. Just tell me what happened." Gu Ning of course wouldn't tell Jiang Xinyue the truth. Jiang Xinyue didn't know where to start. "Just say it." Gu Ning threatened a little. Jiang Xinyue immediately opened her mouth. "A boy in our school likes me and sent me a letter, but I didn't take it. Then a girl who likes the boy found out about it. She came to me and slapped my face several times. She even warned me to stay away from the boy, or she will hit me every time she sees me. But there is nothing between the boy and me." Saying that, Jiang Xinyue felt aggrieved and cried again. Hearing that, Gu Ning was extremely annoyed. "Which classroom does the girl study in? What is her name?" Gu Ning curbed her anger and asked coldly. The third classroom in the 9th grade. There's Iapagio, Feng Xiaoyu and Zhang Yanlin. Facing Guning, Jiang Xinhua didn't dare to hide the fact. Get it? I'll fight back for you. And you must remember, don't ever escape and cry alone anymore. You must stand up for yourself. Don't be a coward. No one will respect a chicken. If you can't handle it yourself, you can turn to me for help. Am I clear? Guning educated her cousin. She didn't want her family to be bullied. Yes, Jiang Xinhua answered. She also knew people always bullied the weak, but she was accustomed to staying quiet. It would take time for her to change. Jiang Xinhua's eyes were swollen after she had been crying for a long time. But Guning's magical power not only cured her eyes but also her cheek. When she came out with Guning to eat, she looked no different than usual. Jiang Xinhua was surprised, but she didn't think further. Guning also told Jiang Xinhua to use the excuse that she didn't do well in a test, so she was in a bad mood. Gu Qing and others believed it and comforted Jiang Xinhua to try her best the next time. They dined together in harmony later. At the same time, Leng Xiaoting was still busy learning the ways of chasing a girl. He had read many skills like sending the girl flowers, seeing a movie together, sending the girl gifts, saying sweet nothings to her and so forth, but different girls like different things, which confused Leng Xiaoting a lot. Therefore he stayed up that entire night. The next morning when Guning just walked out of Zone G, she saw a black Land Rover stop by the road, and Leng Xiaoting was leaning against the car door facing her. Guning couldn't deny that the man looked so cool and attractive in that pose. Seeing Guning, Leng Xiaoting immediately stood straight. He was still a little nervous being with her. Let me take you to school. Guning calmed herself down. She felt slightly embarrassed that she was distracted by his charming appearance. Oh no thanks. I always run to school. Leng Xiaoting was a little upset. Then I'll run to your school with you. Guning intended to reject, but suddenly changed her mind. I don't mind. Leng Xiaoting felt better then. He left the car at the same place, running to school with Guning. On the way they didn't talk at all. Leng Xiaoting wanted to, but he had no idea what to say. When they arrived, Leng Xiaoting said, "Let's have breakfast together." I have an appointment with my friends. We'll be having breakfast together." Guning declined on purpose. "How about lunch? Are you free then?" Leng Xiaoting invited again. "Sorry, I need to deal with something then." Guning rejected once more. However, this time, Guning truly had something important to deal with at the noon. She was going to teach those girls who had bullied Jiang Xinhua a lesson. Leng Xiaoting frowned tightly. He was disappointed but wasn't willing to give up. How about this afternoon? Guning didn't want to see Leng Xiaoting being so upset, so she felt reluctant to turn him down again. Sure. Having an affirmative answer, Leng Xiaoting's eyes lit up. What do you want to have? Seafood. Guning knew Leng Xiaoting was allergic to seafood. Thus she deliberately said it. She understood that men were hunters, and you could never let them catch you easily. It was Leng Xiaoting who had warned her that she was too young to fall in love. Now he shot himself in the foot. Guning was a normal girl with ordinary emotions. Sometimes she would test the man she liked too. No problem. Leng Xiaoting knew that Guning did it on purpose, but he agreed. "I'll pick you up at the end of the day." "I don't think that's a good idea. If my classmates find out, they will gossip." "You can tell me where you are then and I'll come to you," Guning said. However, she wasn't actually worried about gossip at all. Instead, she planned to be late and let him wait for her. "Oh, you're right," Leng Xiaoting said. "Bye-bye," Guning said to him before she ran into her school. Leng Xiaoting fixed his eyes on Guning's back until she disappeared from his sight. "Ning Ning." Halfway there, Chu Peihan called Guning from behind. Guning stopped and looked back and noticed Chu Peihan wearing a meaningful smile. It seemed that Chu Peihan had witnessed Leng Xiaoting and her being together. "Tell me, who is that man?" Chu Peihan asked. "A friend," Guning answered. Oh really? What kind of a friend is he? Chu Peihan laid her arm on Gu Ning's shoulder. She wouldn't let her go unless she told her the truth. A normal friend. Gu Ning couldn't help but roll her eyes. Ha, I don't believe it.
Chu Peihan squint.
Believe it or not. Gu Ning said like there was really nothing between Lung Xiaoting and her. Fine, I believe you. Since Gu Ning said they were only friends, then so be it. Chu Peihan only gossiped a little. It didn't mean that she deemed that they were a couple. A male and a female could be brother and sister or friends. They didn't have to be a couple after all. Moreover, Gu Ning and the man didn't seem very close. Ever since Gu Ning had found out that Siti Yi was the boss of the Qin gang, she believed Chu Xianfeng must be a member of the gang as well. And he seemed to be an important figure besides Siti Yi. He must be in a high position in the Qin gang. As for Chu Peihan, Gu Ning wasn't sure whether she was a member of the Qin gang too. Anyway, Gu Ning didn't care about that. She was willing to maintain a good relationship with the Qin gang. Since Chu Peihan didn't expose her real identity, she apparently didn't want others to know it. Thus Gu Ning also kept it a secret. Oh Ningning, which university is your aim? Chu Peihan suddenly asked. The capital university, how about you? Gu Ning asked. I want to go to the same university as you. My older brother can help me arrange us into the same dormitory by then. Chu Peihan was excited. That's a good idea. However, I need to tell you now. I will probably only be staying in school for 1 or 2 months. I'm going to start a business and I'll be super busy. It will be more convenient for me to live outside of the school, Gu Ning said. She didn't want to hide her ambition. What? You're going to start a business? Chu Peihan was amazed. She looked at Gu Ning with admiration. Boss, you're truly my idol now. I don't have the ambition to run a business. I just want to live my life. Boss, if you're successful in the future, please don't forget me. Chu Peihan clasped Gu Ning's arm. Like Gu Ning was going to abandon her. Well, they were just playing with each other. Chu Peihan's family was powerful enough. She actually didn't need Gu Ning's support. Sure, I promise I'll take good care of you if I can be successful in the future. Then I'll marry you into a good family, Gu Ning teased. I don't want to be married. I want to be single and free.
Chu Peihan rito. Gu Ning smiled.
Different people had different thoughts. Chu Peihan was too young to think about that. When she was at a certain age or met her Mr. Right, she would probably change her mind. In City G, Zhou Zhenghong was ready to advertise in the morning. In addition to the outside wall of their store, the advertising space was the LED display on the facade of the downtown shopping mall, and the wall on the other side of the mall. It seemed like only a little, but the advertisement was persuasive. On the LED display it was played every 10 minutes. Jade, the essence of all things, enjoys the reputation of the crown of valuable stones. It has the good meanings of luck, wit, nobility, and fortune. Jade Beauty Jewelry will create high-end jade jewelry. The grand opening ceremony will be held on Saturday, December 12th. Each client can have a 10% discount. You can also make a reservation for the King's Green, the King of Jade. Address: XXXXX. The characters on the advertisement was strictly limited because it was charged by seconds. Gu Ning didn't mind though. People might ignore the beginning of the advertisement, but the King's Green attracted a lot of attention. There weren't many people who knew a lot about jade, but most of them had heard of the King's Green. The advertisement on the wall of the shopping mall was a 5-meter-long, 2-meter-wide poster. The top 3 English words were the King's Green with a large picture of it. It was very eye-catching and attractive. The King's Green was their most important selling point. But they also had many more beautiful jade jewelry pieces made of medium high-level and high-level jade. Each consumer could have a 10% discount on the day of the opening ceremony. A 10% discount wasn't small. If you paid 1 million yuan, you could have 100,000 yuan off, which was quite a lot when it came to jade. The advertisement for Jade Beauty Jewelry didn't have much effect on ordinary people, and those who disliked jade. but it caused a sensation in the jewelry and jade industry. The main reason was the King's Green. The level-off jade used by Jade Beauty Jewelry was also astonishing. It was a high-end brand, mainly producing jewelry made of at least medium-high-level jade. There wasn't an abundant amount of jade in City G, so it was hard to find high-level jade. Jade Beauty Jewelry must be super rich and powerful to acquire so much high-level jade. Many jade experts and businessmen had an intense interest in the King's Green. They all wanted to be the first group of people to have a look at it. Many of them also planned to buy it for their collection. Although they had seen many kinds of jade, and didn't lack it, most of their collection was common or medium-level jade. Let alone the King's Green, few people had seen it, and fewer owned it. Even if you had enough money, you probably wouldn't have a chance to buy one. Jade Beauty Jewelry opened its official Weibo account, which was written on its advertisement post. Thus many subscribed to follow the brand within a short time. Yesterday afternoon, Gu Ning called Master Fu, Master Yan and Master Bai separately, telling them that she had cut out the King's Green, and was going to show it at the opening ceremony. All the jewelry was available for reservation on that day too. She would guide them to have a look first when she went to City G. Each master was thrilled to hear the news. They all urged Gu Ning to come to City G as soon as possible. Both Master Fu and Master Bai wanted to buy the King's Green, but Gu Ning declined. If they wanted it, they could make a reservation for it at the opening ceremony. Gu Ning was a businesswoman right now, and profit was her first priority. The two masters were businessmen as well. They understood Gu Ning's decision, and didn't insist. At the same time, Master Bai and Master Fu planned to reserve a wide jade ring made of the King's Green. They did that because they cherished the King's Green, and to help Gu Ning's business as well. Master Yan was more interested in antiques than jade, so he wasn't involved in the competition. He mainly wanted to have a look. However, Master Fu and Master Bai were both looking forward to Gu Ning's arrival. It was a torture for them to have to wait. Although Gu Ning had told them beforehand, Master Fu and Master Bai were excited to see the advertisement, because they were able to see the King's Green. Nevertheless, it was only a picture of it. They still had to wait for a while longer to see it in real life. Li Jinyu also called Qin Yifan after he heard of the news. Qin Yifan was shocked. He intended to have a look at the opening ceremony of Jade Beauty Jewelry as well. Gu Ning left her school at noon, but Gu Ning was always absent, so her friends complained that she wasn't a qualified boss. Gu Ning truly had something serious to deal with, and they couldn't stop her from doing it. Actually, Gu Ning also felt embarrassed. She had been so busy recently, and didn't have much time to train them. The number 3 high school wasn't far away from the number 4 middle school. It only took Gu Ning 10 minutes to run there. Gu Ning climbed over a wall to get into the number 4 middle school directly. Their school uniforms were in the same color, but in different design, so no one would notice that Gu Ning was from another school unless they took a closer look. When Gu Ning arrived, she called Jiang Xinyue. Jiang Xinyue answered it, but didn't say a word. However, Gu Ning was able to hear the voices through the phone. Jiang Xinyue, I've warned you to stay away from Cheng-Hang. How dare you ignore it? I didn't. It's he who came to apologize to me for what you did to me yesterday, Jiang Xinyue said. Apologize? Why? You deserved it. That was insane. Gu Ning was immediately aggravated. Very well, she had thought that it would waste her time to find them, but unexpectedly, they were right there. However, Gu Ning could only hear their voices. She had no idea of their location. Luckily, Gu Ning had acute hearing. She recognized the sounds around Jiang Xinyue through the phone. It was a sound created when trees swayed and the leaves rubbed against one another. It had to be a place where there were many trees. Gu Ning immediately thought of the woods. She had gone to the number 4 middle school when she was younger, so she was familiar with it. There was a lane in the woods. Therefore, Gu Ning immediately ran to the lane. She ran very fast, even quicker than a professional athlete. Everyone on the way was shocked. However, when they finally got their mind back and wanted to record it with their phones, Gu Ning was already gone. Voices continued to sound from the other side of the phone. Since you won't listen to us, I need to teach you the lesson again. Hearing that, Gu-ning was nervous. She was afraid that Jiang Xinyue would be hurt. Indeed, she soon heard a loud slap sound followed by Jiang Xinyue's agonized scream. Gu-ning's anger was burning now. Damn it! She had planned to punish them lightly, but now it seemed like she had to make them regret what they had done to Jiang Xinyue. When Gu-ning finally got there, Jiang Xinyue had already been slapped twice. Gu-ning dashed forward at once. She kicked the 3 female students surrounding Jiang Xinyue several meters away with great force. Gu-ning didn't think that she should be kind at all. The 3 female students didn't even have a chance to react. One knocked into the tree and fell down onto the ground, then fainted. One's calf hit a stone and it was broken right away. She couldn't move but was crying in severe pain. One's face smashed into the ground. Her jaw swelled. Her front teeth disappeared and blood continuously poured out of her mouth. She wasn't even able to cry. Jiang Xinyue was stunned by the scene before her eyes. There were students in 2s and 3s in the wood. They were all shocked by Gu-ning's strength. Although they felt sorry for what Jiang Xinyue had suffered, no one dared to help her. However, now seeing that people were hurt, someone immediately went to tell the teacher. Gu-ning noticed, but she didn't care. She couldn't run away right now, and couldn't leave Jiang Xinyue alone either. She would deal with the mess that she had caused. Sister. Jiang Xinyue's voice was trembling. They. Although Jiang Xinyue was greatly surprised by Gu-ning's power, she was frightened by the result. Jiang Xinyue had no sympathy for them, but was afraid that Gu-ning and her would get in trouble if those girls were severely injured. Relax. They'll be fine and so will we. Trust me. Gu-ning looked at Jiang Xinyue and comforted her gently. Jiang Xinyue believed Gu-ning. Since Gu-ning said that they would be fine, she believed they would be fine. Gu-ning had only kicked them once and she was still annoyed, but they were already badly injured, so she didn't continue to beat them. Before long, a younger male and a female teacher arrived. Although they hadn't witnessed it themselves, a student had told them that a girl kicked 3 female students several meters away. One passed out. One's leg was broken and one's front teeth were missing, which was shocking. The 2 young teachers couldn't believe that a single girl was able to kick away a person at a time and cause such a great deal of damage, so they thought that it must be an exaggeration. However, when they saw the 3 female students' condition, they had to accept the truth. The female teacher went to the student who had fainted, calling in panic, "Jiao jiao jiao jiao." The student had no reaction. She immediately called an ambulance while the male teacher asked, "Who did this?" "It was me," Gu-ning admitted with alacrity. She didn't seem afraid at all. The male teacher's sight fell on Gu-ning. He recognized that Gu-ning wasn't a student here, but was from the number 3 high school. He was irritated, questioning, "You're a student from the number 3 high school. Why did you come here and beat our students?" Gu-ning met his angry look, showing no fear at all. "Because they slapped another student first." The male teacher frowned a little. "Who did they slap?" "My cousin," Gu-ning answered, pointing to Jiang Xinyue. The male teacher looked to Jiang Xinyue, and the latter moved in fear. Her half-swollen face was still bare in the air. However, there were only 2 overlapped palm marks on Jiang Xinyue's face, while the 3 female students were lying severely injured on the ground. Thus the male teacher tended to protect Xia Jiaojiao and the other 2 girls. "Think she looks fine, but you've beaten them heavily. It's too much." "What? She looks fine after having been slapped twice."
Kuning suuntat treattening.
Her cold look was like a sharp icy knife aiming at the male teacher, who immediately felt frozen. Gu-ning then pointed at the 3 girls arguing in anger. "These girls, especially the one named Xia Jiaojiao, slapped my cousin just because a boy who she likes wrote a letter to my cousin. How could she do that? Who gave her the right to do that? The point is, my cousin didn't take the letter. This morning, the boy came to apologize to my cousin for what she had been through. And then, these girls slapped my cousin once more. Why can they slap my cousin and I can't fight back for my cousin? Do you think I can stand here watching my cousin being slapped and stay quiet? If you were me, you would. You be quiet." Gu-ning was aggressive with her words, and the male teacher felt overwhelmed. This girl was so strong and powerful. She was even more terrible than the principal. Luckily, the male teacher was a reasonable man. He felt ashamed after Gu Ning's argument. Nevertheless, no matter what, it's the fact that you've injured them. I've already called the police, and you can't get away with it. The female teacher wouldn't let Gu Ning go, although she also felt the pressure from her. Xia Jiaojiao and the two female students shouldn't have slapped Jiang Xinhua. But Gu Ning also had to take responsibility for what she had done. Actually, Gu Ning just needed to pay the administration fee if they could make her do it, but the female teacher of course intended to let Gu Ning pay more than just money. Jiang Xinhua instead was scared that the teacher had called the police. Gu Ning held her hand, giving her power, and comforted her. I know that I should take responsibility for what I've done, but what they have done to my cousin is intentional injury, which is more serious, Gu Ning said in a meaningful way. She wasn't worried at all. So what can you do? The female teacher apparently didn't believe that Gu Ning had the ability to stand against her. Because she knew Jiang Xinhua's background, she didn't think that Gu Ning could bear the result. From the female teacher's attitude, Gu Ning sensed that there must be at least one girl among the three who was from a powerful or rich family, but so what, Gu Ning wasn't weak either. If they wanted to use their network to gain an advantage, Gu Ning would do the same. Interesting. Then let's see. Gu Ning didn't care at all. Instead, she sounded provocative. In the female teacher's eyes, Gu Ning's confidence amounted to naiveness. However, the male teacher didn't know Jiang Xinhua's background. Seeing Gu Ning being so calm and confident, he assumed that she must be powerful. Nevertheless, no matter what, he didn't want to be involved further. Within 2 minutes, there were a lot of people gather around, including several teachers. Everyone was shocked by the fact that Gu Ning had kicked Xia Jiaojiao and the other two girls several meters away, but few of them criticized Gu Ning. Just as Gu Ning had explained, although she had to take responsibility for what she had done, Xia Jiaojiao's behavior was an intentional injury. A few minutes later, the principal arrived as well. The principal was named Du Haiping, and was a snobbish and selfish man. Xia Jiaojiao's father was the leader of the Administrative Examination and Approval Section of the Education Bureau, Xia Mingshan. It would be of great help if he could maintain a good relationship with Xia Jiaojiao's father. If not, his career would end soon. Du Haiping didn't have powerful support after all, so he had to please the rich and the authorities. That being the case, he obviously completely stood for Xia Jiaojiao. Once he found out that Gu Ning was the one who had beaten Xia Jiaojiao and the other two girls, he immediately swore at her without asking the reason. However, seconds later Gu Ning stopped him. Enough! Gu Ning was so aggressive that Du Haiping was struck dumb. He rounded his eyes focusing on Gu Ning, but didn't know what to do next. All the other people were surprised that Gu Ning dared to yell at the principal. Even the female teacher was slightly regretful, but she still refused to believe that Gu Ning had support. It seemed like today would be a long day. As the principal, you snapped and blamed me without even asking why. You're a shame to teachers. Gu Ning was being very serious, but not because she was arrogant. It was the principal who didn't have any moral standards after all. After a long while, Du Haiping finally realized that he had been educated and humiliated by a teenager. He was annoyed with shame. How dare you talk to me like that? Wasn't it you who injured those girls? So what? They have slapped my cousin twice on purpose. They deserve it, Gu Ning said coldly. You! Du Haiping was mad. Your cousin seems fine. Why did you have to do that? Don't treat others the way you don't want to be treated. I think that I've already been kind, Gu Ning sneered. Gee, how naive you are. You could be arrested.
Du Haiping threatened.
I don't care. I won't be the only one who will be arrested. Gu Ning shrugged, glancing at Xia Jiaojiao and the other two girls. Don't forget there is one thing called power in this world, other than equality. Du Haiping said with disdain. He was laughing at Gu Ning's innocence. Of course, other than equality, there is one thing called power in this world, Gu Ning replied in a meaning way. So, never annoy someone you don't know. Seeing Gu Ning being so confident, Du Haiping got anxious. Is this girl from a powerful family? Right at that time they heard police sirens in the distance. The police came within 10 minutes. Although the police station wasn't far away, it wasn't near either. Because the female teacher specifically reminded the police that it was the daughter of Xia Mingshan, the leader of the Administrative Examination and Approval Section of the Education Bureau, who had fainted after being kicked. The police didn't dare to waste time. The hospital was a little farther away than the police station, so the ambulance hadn't arrived yet. A police car stopped beside the crowd. 3 policemen got out walking inside. The female teacher immediately walked ahead talking to the policeman. "It's so nice to meet you. It's her who has injured 3 students. Take her away," a policeman ordered. The other 2 policemen stepped to Guning at once, and one of them had handcuffs. They didn't bother to ask the reason. It was obvious that they had been bought by money. "Wait." Guning stopped them. The 2 policemen stopped looking at her with disdain. One of them asked, "What? Are you going to resist?" "No, but aren't you supposed to figure out what has happened before you arrest me?" Guning asked seriously. Hearing that, the 2 policemen lost their patience. They didn't think that it was necessary. However, in front of the public they couldn't say it out aloud, so they asked a perfunctory question. "Fine, then let me ask you. Did you hit them?" "Yes," Guning answered. "Then I don't think there is anything wrong if we arrest you," the policeman said. "Nevertheless, they also slapped my cousin. You should arrest them all as well," Guning retorted, pointing at Xiaopagio and the other 2 girls. "You need to go to the police station to write down the arrest record now. They are injured and have to go to the hospital right away. We'll have another policeman talk to them in the hospital," the policeman said. The policeman put it so well, but only to deceive the crowd. He wouldn't do the same thing behind everyone's back. Guning understood that. She only argued because she didn't want to be regarded as a criminal. "Sure, but it's only a civil dispute. I'm not a criminal. You don't have a right to handcuff me." Guning also understood that it was a trap to go to the police station, but she wasn't afraid of it. "Fine, let's go," the policeman agreed. Guning didn't move right away but looked at Du Haiping. She threatened, "Principal Du, if my cousin is hurt when I'm not here, you will be replaced for sure." Her cold voice was quite persuasive. Du Haiping had to believe that Guning had the ability to replace him. She couldn't let Jiang Xinyue go to the police station with her. No matter if Jiang Xinyue was guilty or not, her reputation would be affected, but Guning didn't care. "Please?" Jiang Xinyue clasped Guning. She wouldn't let her leave. "Relax, I'll be fine. Don't tell our families." Guning stared at Jiang Xinyue with determination. Jiang Xinyue felt comforted for no reason. Then Guning left with the 2 policemen. Just as they got in the car, the ambulance arrived. In the car, Guning took out her phone to make a call. A policeman immediately reached out his hand to grab it. "You're a suspect now. Your phone has to be confiscated." Guning raised her hand to seize his hand tightly. The policeman couldn't move all of a sudden. A grown-up man failed to deal with a teenage girl. The policeman was irritated with shame. He threatened, "Let me go or I'll arrest you for attacking the police." "Attack the police? Do you think I'll be afraid of that? Stay away. You can't afford the result."
Kuningvarnet Koltli.
"You." The policeman was mad, but he knew he couldn't defeat the girl. However, he was also surprised by her confidence. The female teacher had already told them that the girl was from an ordinary family. That was the reason why they were so rude. So he said in a sarcastic way, "How dare you beat the daughter of Xia Mingshan? Do you know who her father is? He is the leader of the Administrative Examination and Approval Section of the Education Bureau. You're doomed." "So what?" "They forced me to do so," Guning said calmly. "How naive you are. Do you think you will be safe once you walk into the police station?" Another policeman asked in an arrogant way. "It's not up to you. In City F, a leader of the Administrative Examination and Approval section of the Education Bureau is nothing, Gu Ning replied with confidence. It seemed like she was more powerful than Xia Mingshan. Nevertheless, it's more than enough to deal with a poor girl like you, the policeman said with disdain. Even though Gu Ning was so confident, he still believed that she was merely a poor girl. The two other policemen had a different opinion. A poor girl wouldn't dare to ignore the influence of Xia Mingshan and attack the police. Was this girl not as ordinary as the female teacher told them? How can you be so sure that I'm a poor ordinary girl? Have you done the investigation yourself?
Kuning teas, et
She didn't understand why these people were so certain she was weak. In the past, she was indeed a poor ordinary girl, but now, let alone her either rich or powerful friends, she as the chairman of Shanghua Real Estate was influential enough to protect herself. Of course, she had no intention to use her identity as the chairman of Shanghua Real Estate. There was no need to do so. Hearing that, those policemen were anxious. Isn't she a poor ordinary girl? Aren't you a poor ordinary girl? One policeman asked unconsciously. We'll find out later, Gu Ning said. All of a sudden, the three policemen felt uneasy, but they still had to do what they should do. Gu Ning picked up her phone calling someone. This time, none of the policemen dared to say a word. Seeing that the caller was Gu Ning, Lung Xiaoting immediately answered with amazement. However, when he heard what Gu Ning had been through, he was upset and annoyed. Gu Ning asked, "Didn't you tell me you can help me? I beat someone at the number 4 middle school, and I was arrested by a nearby police station. Can you get me out? If you can't, I'll call." Before Gu Ning could finish, she was interrupted by Lung shouting, "Can wait a second. I'll come to you." "Great, I'll wait for you," Gu Ning answered before she hung up. "I'll wait for you." Lung shouting felt like his heart was touched heavily. He immediately walked out and forgot that he was wearing a pair of slippers. Once he was outside, he called someone. He didn't realize he was in a pair of slippers until he got into the car. But there was no time to change, so he directly drove to the police station at a high speed. The policeman looked at Gu Ning with mixed emotions. Is this girl really influential? Several minutes later, they arrived at the police station. Gu Ning was guided into a trial room, but no one walked in to question her. Outside, the three policemen were discussing in a low voice. What should we do now? I think we should wait. What if she really called someone who is more powerful than Xia Mingshan? I agree. Although Xia Mingshan is man of some power, he is indeed not an official in City F. At that time, a middle-aged policeman walked over. Noticing that the three young policemen were standing outside talking, his face changed. What are you doing out here? Go and question the criminal right now. Don't let her go, for Leader Xia's sake. Leader Wang, this girl seems influential. She just called someone to bring her out of here. We want to wait until the person arrives. We can make the decision according to the person's identity. One policeman answered. The middle-aged policeman hesitated for a second, then asked, "Didn't the female teacher tell us that she is merely a poor ordinary girl? Nevertheless, she despised Leader Xia, and she is so confident and aggressive. I don't think that a real poor ordinary girl would do that." Another policeman replied, "You're right. Then let's wait for a while," Leader Wang ordered. He wanted to please Xia Mingshan, but he also didn't want to annoy someone that he shouldn't annoy. He could lose his job for that. At that time, the phone in the police station rang. After a few seconds, a policewoman came to them and told Leader Wang to answer the call. It was from the director of the Public Security Bureau, Liang Yobua. Hearing that, everyone was shocked. The director of the Public Security Bureau? Was it because of the female student that they just arrested? They felt that they were in trouble now. Leader Wang immediately ran to answer the call. "Hi, Director Liang. I'm Wang Rongkong, the vice leader of the police station in Baoshan area. What may I do to help?" The minute Wang Rongkong finished, a male voice sounded with slight anxiety. Did you just arrest a female student named Guning in the number 4 middle school? Hearing that, Wang Renkong knew that something must be wrong. Although he didn't know whether the girl was Guning, he was certain that it must be her, because she was the only one that they had just arrested in the number 4 middle school. Wang Renkong truly didn't expect that the female student was so influential that the director called for her in person. Wang Renkong wiped the sweat from his forehead. His voice was trembling a little. Yes, director. No matter why you arrested her, let her go right now. Be polite. Do you understand? Liang Yobo ordered directly. Sure. Wang Renkong answered. He felt lucky that he hadn't annoyed Guning just because of Xia Mingshan. Compared with Director Liang's order, their relationship was nothing. After he hung up, Wang Renkong walked back to the trial room in a hurry. The 3 young policemen looked at him asking carefully, Leader Wang, how is it? The director ordered that we should let her go right now, no matter why we arrested her. Be polite, Wang Renkong replied. Hearing that, they couldn't help but take a long breath in. Although the 3 young policemen felt lucky that they hadn't treated Guning violently in the car, they were worried about the words that they had said to Guning. Wang Renkong wasn't in the mood to care about them now. He went to the trial room in person to please Guning. In the trial room, Guning sat there feeling bored. She heard everything they were talking about outside. She had to admit that Leng Xiaoting was very influential if even the director of the Public Security Bureau had to do him a favor. As it showed, Leng Xiaoting wasn't simple at all. The minute Wang Renkong stepped inside, he put on a pleasing smile. Miss Gu, nice to meet you. I'm the vice leader of this police station, Wang Renkong. I'm so sorry for what you've been through. You may leave right now, and please allow me to send you back to school. Wang Renkong was being very polite, so Guning treated him kindly too. It's fine. I don't need you to send me to school. I don't feel aggrieved either, but I want it to end in the correct way, not just because of the power. Then Guning gave Wang Renkong a piece of paper. Wang Renkong immediately took it. Guning added, although you didn't question me, I've already written down everything. You can go check it. I know I shouldn't have beaten them, but I only did it to protect my cousin. Wang Renkong read through it. He knew that Guning was telling the truth. From the perspective of the law, Guning only needed to pay the administration fee, but the director had ordered to let her go. Wang Renkong didn't dare to let Guning pay the fee. At the same time, Wang Renkong was also astonished that Guning was able to kick a person several meters away. This girl is so amazing. I don't want anyone to bully my cousin from now on, especially Xia Jiaojiao. Please call their principal and let him be aware of that. As far as I'm concerned, the principal tends to protect Xia Jiaojiao. Wang Renkong of course understood Guning's aim. Du Haiping, the principal of the number 4 middle school, protected Xia Jiaojiao for the sake of Xia Mingshan. As for Du Haiping's behavior, Wang Renkong actually could understand it. He would do the same thing when facing power. They would always stand with the more powerful one. Like what was happening now. Guning was the more influential one, and they naturally tended to please Guning. No problem, I'll call him later, Wang Renkong answered. He was going to threaten the principal, in fact. Oh, as for Xia Mingshan, I hope he can spend more time on educating his child. Students should focus more on studying. Do not hurt others out of impulse. If it happens again, it won't end as easily as it did today, Guning said. Sure, Wang Renkong answered. Guning then left, followed by Wang Renkong. She saw the 3 young policemen who had brought her to this police station the minute she walked out of the trial room. They appeared panicked. I told you that it's not up to you whether I will be safe. You better obey the rules and the laws the next time. If it happens again, you can't bear the result, Guning said to them before she walked away. She wasn't threatening them, but just reminded them. If they continued to do what they did, they would be in trouble soon. Those policemen felt ashamed and learned their lesson. They were also grateful that Gu Ning didn't punish them. Miss Gu, it is 2:10 p.m. now. I suppose you need to attend your classes. Please allow me to send you to your school. Wang Renkong asked in an extremely polite way. No thanks. Someone will pick me up, Gu Ning replied coldly, walking straight out of the police station. A black Land Rover stopped right at the roadside. Leng Xiaoting got out of the driver's seat. Seeing that Gu Ning was safe, he was relieved. Even though he knew that she would be fine, he felt worried. Gu Ning walked to him, and Leng Xiaoting immediately opened the door of the passenger seat for her. At that time, Gu Ning noticed that the man was wearing a pair of slippers. She was quite surprised. Leng Xiaoting flushed a little, explaining, I was in a hurry. Haha. Gu Ning couldn't help laughing out loud, but she was touched. He had forgotten to change his shoes. He must have been super worried. Leng Xiaoting felt embarrassed, and immediately changed the topic. Are you all right? I'm fine. Let's go now. Gu Ning got in the car. Leng Xiaoting closed the door, going back to his driver's seat and left. Wang Renkong watched the car disappear from his sight and finally relaxed. After that, he called Xia Mingshan and Du Haiping without delay and told them what Gu Ning had told him. Both Xia Mingshan and Du Haiping felt frightened. No one dared to say another word. As for the hospital administration fee, Xia Mingshan would pay it himself. After all, Feng Xiaoyu and Zhang Yanlin were hurt because of Xia Jiaojiao. Gu Ning told Leng Xiaoting to take her back to school. Then she called Jiang Xinhua. Luckily, Jiang Xinhua was fine too. Gu Ning hung up, turning to Leng Xiaoting. Thanks for what you did. My pleasure, Leng Xiaoting said. Let's have steak this afternoon. I don't feel like eating seafood anymore. Since Leng Xiaoting had helped her, she decided to treat him better. Sure. A smart man like Leng Xiaoting, he obviously understood why Gu Ning suddenly changed her mind. He was happy in his heart. On the way, the two didn't talk much. They were in a hurry, so Leng Xiaoting drove fast but steadily. It normally took 20 minutes, but they arrived after 15 minutes. Gu Ning stepped out of the car, saying goodbye to Leng Xiaoting before she ran into her school. Fortunately, she got back to her classroom on time. During the break, Gu Ning called Gu Man and told her that she was going to dine with her friends this afternoon and wouldn't be eating at home. When the afternoon classes were finally over, Gu Ning took a taxi to a Western restaurant where Leng Xiaoting had a reservation. She didn't want to cause any rumors, so she didn't allow Leng Xiaoting to pick her up. The appointed time was at 6:30 p.m. Gu Ning left her school at 5:50 p.m., and it took at least 30 minutes to get to the downtown by taxi. It was the rush hour now, and she had to spend more time on the road. Meanwhile, Leng Xiaoting arrived much earlier at 5:30 p.m. When it was almost 6 p.m., Gu Ning received a message from Leng Xiaoting. They would dine together in the number 520 private room. Gu Ning understood why he came so early, but she thought that the number of the private room was funny. Couldn't be a coincidence. He must have arranged it on purpose. Gu Ning was surprised that Leng Xiaoting was so romantic. The man was indeed trying his best to win her heart. Gu Ning was lucky to get in a taxi the minute she walked out, and the traffic wasn't heavy along the way. Thus she arrived at the restaurant at 6:40 p.m. When a waiter came to welcome Gu Ning, he looked astonished to hear that Gu Ning had an appointment in the number 520 private room. Leng Xiaoting had caused a sensation when he had arrived. His muscular body, long legs and the extraordinarily handsome face were even more charming than a male idol or stars. He had reserved the number 520 private room and made some arrangements. It was obvious that he was going to dine with his girlfriend. They all believed that his girlfriend had to be super stunning and sexy, but unexpectedly, a young teenage girl came later. The teenage girl was beautiful but was too young. They didn't seem like a couple at all. The waiter guided Gu Ning to the number 520 private room before he left. Gu Ning went to knock on the door herself. However, just as she raised her hand, the door opened. Leng Xiaoting heard Gu Ning's voice, so he went to open the door for her. His eyes met hers and neither of them knew what to say. At that moment they only had each other in their eyes. Meanwhile, Gu Ning thought that she fell in love. No matter if it was because of his exterior or interior, Leng Xiaoting touched her heart. Even though she wasn't familiar with him, she only knew his name and that he was a military officer and nothing else. They hadn't even talked much. Somehow she trusted him and felt safe being with him. Leng Xiaoting actually fell in love with the feelings he had when he was with her. He couldn't help missing her, caring about her and even having her. It was hard to explain why you fell in love with a particular person, but that was exactly when you found yourself in deep and unconditional love with them. Come on in. Leng Xiaoting got his mind back first. He stepped aside to let Gu Ning in. Hearing Leng Xiaoting's voice, Gu Ning finally realized that she was still standing at the door. She felt a little embarrassed but calmed down immediately walking inside. There was only a bottle of wine with 2 glasses and a menu on the table. Leng Xiaoting pulled the chair out for Gu Ning. After she was seated, he went back to his seat handing the menu to Gu Ning. Ladies first. Leng Xiaoting suddenly behaved like a gentleman, and Gu Ning was still not used to it yet. She took the menu reading it. Leng Xiaoting rang the service bell at the same time. Before long a waiter came inside. Gu Ning ordered a medium-well fillet steak with black pepper sauce. Leng Xiaoting did the same. Then Gu Ning ordered a fruit pizza and fruit salad. When the waiter was gone, Leng Xiaoting hesitated a little. It seemed like he planned to do something, but didn't know whether it was a good time. What's wrong? Gu Ning asked. She thought Leng Xiaoting must have something else to deal with and had to leave earlier. I want to give you something. If you don't like it, please don't be mad, Leng Xiaoting said with caution. Oh. Gu Ning didn't expect that Leng Xiaoting hesitated just because he didn't want to upset her. She was quite surprised but felt that it was interesting too. She wasn't a child who would get mad easily just because she received a gift she didn't like. Gu Ning was curious what kind of gift Leng Xiaoting was going to give her. Sure, I won't be mad, Gu Ning replied. Leng Xiaoting was relieved. He stood up walking to the back and brought it out. However, when Gu Ning saw Leng Xiaoting stepping back to her with dozens of red roses in his hands, she had mixed emotions. In her last incarnation, Qi Ziyue had always sent her roses with sweet nothings when he had chased her. It was all fake and she only felt that it disgusting and sarcastic. Gu Ning had hidden her hatred towards Qi Ziyue well nowadays, so she remained calm. And it would be unfair to Leng Xiaoting if she thought of Qi Ziyue now. Thus she forgot it right away. Leng Xiaoting walked to Gu Ning. He flushed a little and was very nervous but said to Gu Ning with sincerity, I heard that girls like roses, but I suppose not every girl like roses. Do you like it? Of course.
Kuningan sveret.
She grabbed the roses away from Leng Xiaoting. Actually, most girls liked roses, especially when they were from a man that she liked. Leng Xiaoting was cheered up to see Gu Ning being delighted. However, the next second Leng Xiaoting was anxious again. I bought 2 movie tickets. Can you go to watch the movie with me? Gu Ning was struck dumb for a second. Movie tickets? She was more than surprised now. It seemed that Leng Xiaoting had indeed done his homework. Sure, Gu Ning agreed. Now Leng Xiaoting was finally relaxed. His face was alight with excitement. It wasn't a common thing to see pleasure on Leng Xiaoting's face, but now he was like a boy before the girl that he liked. The fruit salad, steak and pizza were soon on the table. Leng Xiaoting opened the bottle, pouring a glass of wine for Gu Ning and himself. Although they didn't talk much, they dined together in harmony. After the meal, the two went to a movie theater. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting attracted a lot of attention, but people had different opinions towards them. As for Leng Xiaoting, everyone was stunned and almost screamed as if they had met a superstar. But most of them were jealous of Gu Ning. Although she was pretty, she was too young and seemed like a student. She didn't match Lung's shouting at all. Some only thought so to themselves, but some said it aloud. Some were even gossiping about whether Lung shouting and Gu Ning were brother and sister. Gu Ning was upset to hear that. Am I that terrible? Lung shouting liked Gu Ning very much, and he wouldn't allow others to judge her. He also felt that Gu Ning was unhappy, so he glanced at the people around them with a cold look. No one dared to say another word again. The man was handsome but wasn't easygoing. Lung shouting's behavior touched Gu Ning. She stopped feeling sad then. Lung shouting went to buy 2 bottles of water and a tub of popcorn before they went in. Lung shouting had booked 2 seats at the last row. Although the movie was the most popular one these days, it was about to stop playing in theaters soon. Thus there weren't many viewers in the screening room. Therefore, only Gu Ning and Lung shouting were sitting in the last row. It was a domestic comedy, which was thought-provoking too. It wasn't one of those funny but vulgar films. Gu Ning was absorbed by this movie. She learned a lot from it while laughing. Lung shouting wasn't actually interested in movies. He paid more attention to Gu Ning. Seeing that she was enjoying it so much, he felt satisfied as well. 1.5 hours later, the movie was over. Gu Ning and Lung shouting didn't leave until the rest of the viewers were all gone. It was almost 10 p.m. when they left the theater, so they went back to Fenghua Luxury Mansion. On the way, both Gu Ning and Lung shouting stayed quiet. It was a little embarrassing though. Lung shouting wanted to say something, but he was lost for words. He had searched many sweet nothings on the internet, but he couldn't say it aloud because he thought they weren't sincere. But he wasn't a man who was good at talking, however. If he didn't say anything, it would be very awkward. Gu Ning somehow didn't know what to say. Normally she was talkative, but she suddenly felt shy being with Lung shouting. Well. After a while, the two opened their mouths together, but shut it at the same time too. After you. They did it the same time again. After you, please. Lung shouting said it before Gu Ning this time. Don't you want me to be your girlfriend? Why don't you say something? I am feeling bored, Gu Ning said with dislike, but she actually liked being with him. She understood that Lung shouting wasn't chatty. If she really disliked that, she wouldn't have fallen in love with him. If she didn't like a man, she wouldn't even give him a chance to chase her. Like Qin Yifan, she had turned him down directly. Gu Ning also knew that she shouldn't trust Lung shouting so completely. But sometimes, she didn't need to know everything about him. Feelings mattered most. And if Lung shouting dared to deceive her, she would ruin him without hesitation. She didn't lose confidence in men just because she had been deceived and used by a man in her previous incarnation, but it wasn't a good memory after all. She would be more cautious and never allow such a thing to happen again. Lung shouting stiffened a little. He got nervous all of a sudden. Keep learning. Please give me more time. Seeing Lung shouting being so anxious, Gu Ning felt sorry for him. Jesus! She must be in love with the man deeply now that just a look from him could touch her. But Gu Ning didn't want to give in right away. She added airily, Don't worry. All I have is time. I'm only 18 now. I'm too young to fall in love and I should spend more time on studying. Gu Ning deliberately said the same thing that Lung shouting had said. The man greatly regretted what he had said. Well, Lung shouting wanted to explain it but didn't know how. He had to face the fact that Gu Ning was indeed too young right now, and he didn't want to affect her studying. However, if he didn't deny it, he wouldn't get closer to Gu Ning. Lung shouting was upset. Gu Ning sensed his changing emotions. Although she had no idea what exactly was on his mind, she understood why he looked concerned all of a sudden. Seeing Lung shouting being upset, Gu Ning didn't feel the pleasure of a successful revenge. Instead, she felt upset too. But she just couldn't help annoying him. Gu Ning started to think that she was becoming self-abusive. Of course, Gu Ning wasn't willing to see Lung shouting being upset for a long time. So she continued to ask, What? Nothing. Lung shouting gave it up at the end. although he truly wanted to explain it. Really? If you don't want to say it, then fine. I think you're just joking when you say you want to chase me. Gu Ning was a little mad. No. Leng Xiaoting immediately argued. What? Gu Ning almost lost her patience. I just don't want to affect your studying, Leng Xiaoting finally said.
Impossible.
I'm number 1 in our grade with nearly full scores, Gu Ning said, but then she realized she shouldn't have said it so quickly. It seemed as if she couldn't wait to be together with Leng Xiaoting. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was slightly amazed. He didn't expect that Gu Ning was so excellent at studying. If she could continue to be the number 1 in her grade, she could easily pass the National College entrance exam. She could also be the number 1 in this country too. In that case, all the prestigious universities would compete to be her preference. Gu Ning's aim was the capital university, but that wasn't the point. Since Gu Ning said that she was good at studying, she was available to date then. After that, Leng Xiaoting got excited. Do you mean we can? Gu Ning knew what he was going to say, so she stopped him before he could finish. I didn't say that. If you want to date with me, you need to make an effort. Gu Ning admitted that she was being a little too proud now, but if Leng Xiaoting didn't have the time or patience to chase her, she wouldn't feel satisfied being his girlfriend. She wouldn't agree to be his girlfriend out of passion. She wanted to spend more time on getting along with him. Leng Xiaoting was slightly disappointed that Gu Ning didn't give him an affirmative answer, but she didn't rejected him either, which meant he still had a chance. Leng Xiaoting made up his mind to keep trying. I'll keep trying, Leng Xiaoting said with sincerity. Before long, they arrived at Building G in Fenghua Luxury Mansion. Gu Ning got out of the car walking inside. Leng Xiaoting watched Gu Ning leaving until she disappeared from his sight. The minute Gu Ning stepped in the elevator, she received a message from Leng Xiaoting. Have a good rest. Good night. Gu Ning couldn't help smiling with happiness. Good night. At that time, Leng Xiaoting had just locked his car door and was walking to an elevator. He immediately checked his phone when he received the message back from Gu Ning. There was a faint smile on his lips. If Su Jinchen and others saw that, they would be greatly surprised. They would even doubt that the sun rose from the west, because they had known Leng Xiaoting from at least 5 years to over 10 years, but they had never seen him being so happy. He always wore a cold face and seemed aloof. Leng Xiaoting's personality had a lot to do with his family, so those who knew his background only had sympathy for him. Therefore, each one of the Red Flames supported Leng Xiaoting. When Gu Ning got home, Gu Qing's family was there too, but they looked worried. Jiang Xinhua was sitting on the sofa with her head lowered, remaining quiet. Gu Ning immediately understood what was going on. Gu Ning hadn't helped Jiang Xinhua remove her injury to keep it as proof. Now her family had found out about it. Jiang Xinhua had probably already told them everything. Gu Ning opened her mouth and was ready to tell them the truth in person, but Gu Qing interrupted her. Ningning, I know you're a good child who is able to make decisions on your own. Can you help me with something? Gu Ning stood up from the sofa looking at Gu Ning for help. Gu Ning was struck dumb. What? Sure. Please tell me what happened. Gu Ning curbed her confusion for now. Xinhua was slapped by some of her schoolmates today, but she refused to tell us the reason. We then called her head teacher. Her teacher told us that the girl who slapped Xinhua is the daughter of Xia Mingshan. Another student who had helped Xinhua was taken into the police station afterwards. I seriously don't know how to deal with it. Can you give me some advice? Gu Qing's voice was trembling. Gu Qing had almost fainted when she had heard that. Her heart ached that Jiang Xinhua had been slapped. She also felt sorry for the student who had helped Jiang Xinhua and had been taken away by the policeman. She was afraid of Xia Mingshan too. All in all, both Gu Qing and Gu Man were very anxious throughout the day, but they didn't have the ability nor wisdom to handle it, so they could only wait until Gu Ning got home. Jiang Xinhua's head teacher wasn't clear about the details and the result. Thus he didn't tell Gu Qing that Gu Ning was the student who had helped Jiang Xinhua, and that Gu Ning had soon been released. Gu Ning was shocked that Jiang Xinhua had kept her mouth closed. Indeed, because Gu Ning had told her not to tell their families, Jiang Xinhua hadn't said anything about Gu Ning's involvement. If their families found out that Gu Ning had been involved in it, they would have been more worried. In fact, right now they were truly more concerned about the student who had helped Jiang Xinhua and had been taken away by the policeman. It was because of Jiang Xinhua that she had been caught. They all felt guilty. Gu Ning was happy to know that Jiang Xinhua was able to keep her promise. It proved that Jiang Xinhua was someone that she could trust. Don't worry. If you can't handle it, I understand, Gu Qing added. She didn't want to burden Gu Ning. Gu Ning had helped them a lot already. If they had been able to deal with it themselves, they wouldn't have bothered Gu Ning.
Kuningsikhet sekretli.
She knew that she couldn't hide it any longer, so she told them the truth. Aunt, uncle, please relax. The problem has already been solved by me. Everyone was shocked to know that Gu Ning was the student who had helped Jiang Xinhua and had been arrested by the policeman. What? The female student is you? Gu Qing couldn't believe it. Ning, how can you be so bold? Are you all right? Gu Man dashed to Gu Ning. She checked Gu Ning's body to see if she was injured or not.
Mom, I'm fine.
I've been practicing kung fu recently. Several men can't even beat me down. Although I did beat those students, it was their fault. I don't need to take much responsibility for it. I have a friend who is a military officer. He called someone in the Public Security Bureau, and those policemen let me go right away. And you don't need to worry about that leader, Xia. He is nothing compared to my friend. Gu Ning comforted them. Gu Man and others were fully confused by her complicated explanation. But since Gu Ning said they would be fine, they believed it. As for her friend who was a military officer, Gu Man and others were very curious about how they met each other. They cared about Gu Ning's safety after all. However, they didn't ask the question in the end. Instead, they chose to believe that Gu Ning could handle her life. After a short silence, Gu Man suddenly said to Gu Ning, Ning, we've read the VIP's material in our beauty salon today. Your eldest aunt is a VIP in Kame too. Hearing that, Gu Ning was a little surprised. It's no big deal. We just continue to do what we should do, Gu Ning said. She didn't think that they needed to hide or anything. Gu Man and Gu Qing wouldn't stay in the beauty salon all day, so it wasn't highly likely that they would meet. Even if they met, it wasn't a bad thing to let Lin Lijuan know that they were the bosses now. The next day was a rainy day. Gu Ning couldn't run to her school, so she didn't leave her home that early. Around 6 a.m., Gu Ning walked out with an umbrella. Leng Xiaoting was already waiting for her outside of Zone G. He knew that Gu Ning was accustomed to running to her school, but she couldn't do it on a rainy day, so he went to drive her to school. The minute Gu Ning got outside, she noticed a familiar car stopped at the roadside. Leng Xiaoting was standing beside it holding an umbrella. Gu Ning was touched. Leng Xiaoting immediately opened the car door for Gu Ning. It's a rainy day. Let me take you to school. Gu Ning didn't hesitate but walked straight over to get in the car. After they were both in the car, Leng Xiaoting didn't drive ahead right away, but took out a lunchbox handing it to Gu Ning. I made the breakfast myself. Would you mind having a try? Gu Ning was amazed that the man had prepared breakfast for her in person. She almost cried at that moment. Although Leng Xiaoting wasn't talkative and didn't like to say sweet nothings, he treated her so well with his actions. You made it yourself? How considerate you are.
Kuningsite.
She took the lunchbox. Thanks. Leng Xiaoting blushed a little. My pleasure, Leng Xiaoting answered. He didn't want her to say thanks to him too often. He wanted to be closer to her. After that, Leng Xiaoting gave Gu Ning a bottle of milk. Gu Ning took it but didn't say thanks this time. Gu Ning put the milk away, opening the lunchbox. It had 2 layers. There were 2 blocks on the first layer. One was full of fruits and a fried egg in the shape of a heart. Gu Ning looked to Leng Xiaoting with astonishment. That was so sweet. Although Leng Xiaoting pretended to focus on driving, he still sensed the look from Gu Ning. However, he was too shy to look her in the eyes now. Gu Ning moved her sight back to the lunchbox then. She opened the second layer. There was oatmeal inside with chopped scallions sprayed on the top in the shape of a heart too. Although it was an ordinary breakfast, Gu Ning was deeply touched. Leng Xiaoting drove steadily, and Gu Ning was eating, so he didn't drive fast for her sake. Gu Ning had a comfortable breakfast in the car. She finished it before arriving at the school. The minute the morning class was over, everyone was playing on their phone. Some were playing online games and some were chatting on WeChat while some were viewing the forum. Right at that moment, the latest news post caused a sensation. Its title was Hot News. A poor girl, Gu Ning, got out of her sugar daddy's luxury car. Picture attached. What?
Impossible.
In the fourth classroom, a male student yelled out in surprise. The rest of the classmates in the classroom all got a fright. Someone said, "Chunbin, what the hell are you doing?" Big news. Someone posted a post saying that Gu Ning has a sugar daddy.
Chenbin replied,
What? Hearing that, everyone was shocked. They immediately looked at Gu Ning. Some didn't believe that it was true, while some couldn't believe that it was true. However, only Gu Ning knew the facts. They immediately logged in the forum to read the post. Gu Ning at the same time felt upset. She pulled her phone out as well. Ning. Mixi was worried. She didn't believe that it was real, but apparently someone did it on purpose. Relax, I'll be fine. Gu Ning comforted. She was the one in trouble, but she was comforting Mixi instead. The person involved was calm and collected, but observers were very worried. Gu Ning read the post. It mainly said Gu Ning, who studies in the 4th classroom in the 12th grade, is from a dirt poor one-parent family. Her mother is a factory worker with a monthly salary of 3,000 yuan. To pay her tuition fee, Gu Ning sold her body. On this rainy day, her sugar daddy drove her to school. The pictures attached were the scenes as she had got out of Leng Xiaoting's car. Gu Ning was annoyed that someone was so vicious as to do that, but she wasn't upset or worried about the impact at all. If she wasn't able to handle such a small issue now, she wouldn't be successful in the future. As for who had secretly taken the photo, Gu Ning decided to check Leng Xiaoting's driving recorder. She knew Leng Xiaoting had put a driving recorder both at the front and back. Before she got the proof, Gu Ning didn't know exactly who was behind it, but no matter who he or she was, Gu Ning made up her mind to make them pay for it. Gee, Gu Ning, didn't you say that I slandered you the other day? Now the news has come out, and what can you say about it? The first one who opened mouth to argue with Gu Ning was Xiao Feifei. Xiao Feifei had always disliked Gu Ning, and now she seized the chance to make fun of Gu Ning. Gu Ning didn't miss any details of Xiao Feifei's reaction. It seemed like Xiao Feifei was really surprised to hear the news too. Gu Ning believed that Xiao Feifei had nothing to do with it this time. Exactly. You're a liar. No one will believe you, Wu Qingya added. I don't think so. Gu Ning doesn't seem like that kind of girl, someone retorted. Don't you know appearances lies? Her family is so poor. If she doesn't find herself a sugar daddy, she even can't afford to study in school. Yang Yulu said acidly. You're right, someone agreed. That's insane. A picture doesn't mean anything. What if they're relatives or friends? Someone argued. Exactly. Wu Qingya. I saw you get out of a car that belonged to Xiao Feifei's family the other day. Is Xiao Feifei's father your sugar daddy? Someone said. Although it sounded insulting, it made sense. What did you say? Wu Qingya stood up abruptly, arguing in great anger. Nobody except Gu Ning noticed that Wu Qingya panicked a little. Gu Ning was surprised. Is there really something between Wu Qingya and Xiao Feifei's father? If not, why did she panic? My father would never do that. My father and I drove Qingya to our school together that day. Xiao Feifei stood up for her father. Then how can you jump to the conclusion that Gu Ning has a sugar daddy, when you don't even have an idea of who is inside? Mixi said. The post says so, not us. Yang Yulu retorted. Don't forget Chu Peihan. Hao Ran and other boys are Gu Ning's close friends. They are all rich kids. If Gu Ning lacks money, they will help her without a doubt. I don't think that Gu Ning needs to find a sugar daddy, someone said. Once he mentioned Chu Peihan, Hao Ran and others, most of the students in the classroom agreed with him. They were friends and Gu Ning was their boss. If Gu Ning really needed money, they would help her for sure. In fact, no one truly believed it. Even Xiao Feifei and her friends doubted the news. They simply wanted to vent their anger this time. However, they of course hoped that it was true. If it was true, Gu Ning's reputation would be ruined. Well, the tuition fee is a huge amount. Even though their families are rich, it isn't their money. Who would randomly give money to others without asking for benefits? Xiao Feifei argued, despite the fact that most were supporting Gu Ning. No matter what, most still chose to believe Gu Ning. I think that the poor can be the rich someday. And those who claim they are rich were once poor. Weren't your grandfathers or grand-grandfathers the poor? No pain, no gain. As long as one is willing to work hard and has the ability to create, he or she can be the first generation of the rich, instead of being a useless heir. Gu Ning sneered. Hearing that, many agreed with Gu Ning. There weren't many real rich kids in their class, and their wealth was inherited from their previous generations who had worked hard. Even Xiao Feifei herself agreed. She had lived a poor life when she had been a little girl. Her family had merely become rich around 10 years ago. Gu Ning, come out now. At that time their head teacher walked out. She looked upset because of the news. Zhang Qiuhua didn't believe that it was real, but she had to figure it out, or it would terribly damage Gu Ning and their school's reputation. The minute that Gu Ning came out, Chu Peihan and Mu Ku ran to her. The two directly ignored Zhang Qiuhua, asking Gu Ning instead, "Boss, did you see the post?" "Yes. Don't worry. I'll handle it," Gu Ning answered. Even though Gu Ning was in trouble, she stayed calm. But her friends were all worried. A friend in need was a friend indeed. "Do you need my older brother to help you catch the one who is behind this? We must beat him or her to death this time," Chu Peihan said in anger, even though Zhang Qiuhua was standing beside her. However, Zhang Qiuhua didn't say anything. Not because she was afraid of Chu Peihan's background, but because the rumor was so disgusting. No matter who was behind this, he or she should be severely punished. "No thanks. I'll check the driving recorder myself," Gu Ning said. "Great." Hearing that, both Chu Peihan and Mu Ku were relieved. They would never let the bad person get away with it. After that, Gu Ning followed Zhang Qiuhua walking away. Hao Ran and the boys arrived later to meet Chu Peihan and Mu Ku. They couldn't remain calm after reading the news, so they immediately came over. "Where's boss?" the boys asked. She followed her head teacher to the office. "Relax, boss will handle it," Chu Peihan answered. F***CK, once I find out who is behind this, I'll beat him to death. Hao Ran clenched his teeth. "Exactly, our boss doesn't need a sugar daddy at all," Qin Zixuan added. The teachers' offices were on the 4th floor in the teaching building. There were 4 teachers in each office. In Zhang Qiuhua's office were the head teachers of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th classroom. Zhang Yuan was the head teacher of the 2nd classroom, while Fang Qin was the head teacher of the 3rd classroom. She was notorious for her meanness. The minute Zhang Qiuhua and Gu Ning walked inside, she opened her mouth. "Oh, Professor Zhang, isn't your class so famous recently, especially this student?" She argued with others in the canteen first and then was involved in a fight. The Qin gang caused trouble afterwards, and now she caused the news of a sugar daddy. Wow, she indeed isn't simple. Ever since the top one in their grade had been in Zhang Qiuhua's class, Fang Qin had been jealous of Zhang Qiuhua. Although they were both common classes, the students in the 3rd classroom were generally better than those in the 4th classroom concerning scores. However, Gu Ning had come top of their grade in every subject. Fang Qin was very displeased. Other than the 1st classroom, which was the top class, and the 2nd classroom, which was an excellent class, all the rest were common classes. Therefore, Fang Qin wouldn't compete with the 1st or the 2nd classroom, but loved to compete with other common classes. Zhang Yuan didn't say a word. He actually didn't believe that it was true. Gu Ning's family was poor, but Chu Peihan would help her without doubt if she needed anything. Jiang Yuan thought that the one who was behind that was in big trouble. Gu Ning wasn't a coward. No one could bully or take advantage of her easily now. All of those things were caused by others. Gu Ning has only protected herself, Zhang Chuhua argued. If it was Gu Ning's fault, she wouldn't stand up for her. But since Gu Ning was the victim, she had to support her. If she didn't annoy others, she wouldn't have been in so much trouble, Feng Qin said. She believed that it must be Gu Ning's fault. However, before Zhang Chuhua could say another word, Gu Ning opened her mouth. Professor Feng, since you already know those events, you're supposed to know the reasons too. As for what has happened in the canteen, it was because someone humiliated my mother in public first. If someone insults your mother in front of everyone, I assume Professor Feng won't stay quiet either, right? If you can stand and forget it, I respect your tolerance, Gu Ning said in a sarcastic way, especially when she said the word tolerance with obvious disdain. If she could stand to let her mother and herself to be humiliated in public, she must either be weak or a coward. Yu Fengqin was mad, but Gu Ning added, as for the fight, that was because someone challenged me to do so. And now I'm their boss. As for the mess of Qinggang, it was obvious that Gu Xiaoxiao caused it. She simply wouldn't stop attacking me. Do you still think these were all my fault? Then you're indeed a very special teacher. Well, does everyone in your class hold the same opinion as you? Special actually meant abnormal in the context. Having a teacher like Feng Qin, the students in her class probably would be the same unkind people. Feng Qin was breathing hard in anger. She couldn't even say a word to argue against Gu Ning. But she glared at Gu Ning like she was going to eat her alive. For a teacher, it was a shame to be doubted in that way. She also didn't expect that Gu Ning would constantly argue against her. However, Gu Ning hadn't finished yet, so she didn't give Feng Qin a chance to retort. As for the scandal this time, it's totally ridiculous. Is a girl amoral just because she gets out of a luxury car? Couldn't the driver be her relative or a friend? Can't the poor have a rich relative or friend? In addition, there is just a photo that doesn't even show the driver. You don't know whether the driver is male or female. How can you jump to the conclusion that I'm behaving immorally? Since you don't the truth, why do you believe that it's my fault? Aren't you as a teacher supposed to know that it's unwise to judge without solid proof? Feng Qin was in a rage caused by shame. She criticized Zhang Chuhua this time. Zhang Chuhua, your student doesn't have any sense of respect. Am I wrong? Gu Ning asked. Gu Ning understood that she should respect her teachers, but the teacher should be respectable in the first place. Obviously, Feng Qin wasn't a qualified teacher, so she didn't deserve Gu Ning's respect. I don't think that Gu Ning is wrong. Professor Feng, we don't know the truth yet. It's not a good time to judge her now, Zhang Yuan said. He wasn't protecting Gu Ning but being honest. You! Feng Qin was more than mad now but didn't know how to argue with them. In fact, Feng Qin knew that it was still a rumor, but she was used to criticizing others just because she didn't like them. Feng Qin lost her face, so she felt too embarrassed to stay in the office, and quickly left. Without Feng Qin's interruption, Zhang Chuhua then had time to talk with Gu Ning. Can you tell me the truth? A friend who lives in the same area as me drove me to school. It's nothing like what the post says. Please allow me to handle it myself.
Gu Ning replied.
Are you sure you can deal with it? Zhang Chuhua asked. Yes, Gu Ning replied. Fine. I don't want it to affect our class or our school. Otherwise, you'll be expelled, and I can do nothing about that. Zhang Chuhua reminded and warned Gu Ning. The rumor wasn't a big deal but was influential. If it could be solved quickly, everything would be fine, but if it went abroad, someone would have to be punished. Sure, Gu Ning answered. The minute that Gu Ning left the office, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out and had a look. It was a message from Lung shouting. She was shocked when she read it. It was a video clip from his driving recorder. The person who had secretly taken the photo of Gu Ning was Chen Xiao. Gu Ning would have thought that Chen Xiao had learned a lesson from what had happened to Gu Xiaoxiao, but unexpectedly, she never learned to be kind. Actually, Gu Ning previously had no intention to cause Chen Xiao trouble, and forgave her for what she had done to her. However, since Chen Xiao left the proof herself, Gu Ning would make full use of it. Other than the video clip, in the message Ling Xiaoting also asked her, "May I help?" He didn't want to interfere in Gu Ning's personal affairs without her permission. Although he truly wanted to do something for her, he didn't want to annoy her. Most importantly, he believed that Gu Ning had the ability to handle it herself. Gu Ning was curious about how Ling Xiaoting found out about the news, so she called him right away. The phone was answered within seconds. Apparently Ling Xiaoting was holding it in his hand. "Ning Ning," Ling Xiaoting answered her. There was a faint trace of concern and guilt in his voice. Yes, he felt guilty, because if he hadn't driven Gu Ning to school on his own initiative, it wouldn't have happened. It was the first time that Ling Xiaoting had called Gu Ning's name. Gu Ning's heart lost a beat. She asked, "How did you find out about it?" "I was visiting your school forum out of boredom, so I found it," Ling Xiaoting answered. He wanted to know more about Gu Ning's school, so he had visited her school forum. To his astonishment, the rumor went viral. He had been greatly aggravated, but he didn't know that Gu Ning was from a one-parent family until he had read the news. He now cared more about Gu Ning. "Do you need me to do anything for you?" Ling Xiaoting asked. "No thanks. I'll handle it," Gu Ning declined. "Great, if you need anything just tell me." Ling Xiaoting was slightly disappointed that Gu Ning didn't need his help, but he didn't insist. He trusted Gu Ning. They hung up. When Gu Ning got back to her classroom, the first class had already passed 1/3 of its course. Seeing that Gu Ning was back, everyone wanted to find out what she had been through. Some was worried about her, while some were mainly waiting to see a drama. The teacher knew the reason why Gu Ning was late, so she didn't say anything. Gu Ning went back to her seat. She comforted Yu Mixi with a mild look. She used her phone, logging into the forum and editing her post. "I'm Gu Ning from the 4th classroom in the 12th grade. As for the fake news saying that I climbed out of my sugar daddy's luxury car, I'm mad and will never let the person who created the rumor get away with it. You have no proof that I can't afford my tuition fee. No one should randomly judge a person based on unreal information. I'm poor now, but it doesn't mean that I'll be poor forever. And those who claim that you're born rich, weren't you fathers, grandfathers, or even grand-grandfathers poor? No one earns their fortune without pain. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. Let's go and see. Can't the poor have a rich relative or friend? My friend drove me to school out of kindness. Is there anything wrong with that? If any one of you have done immoral things, do you dare to show up in the public? Please delete the fake news right now and apologize to me, otherwise you'll pay for it." Other than deleting the post and apologizing to Gu Ning, Chen Xiao would still have to bear the result. Gu Ning would never let her get away with it that easily. After editing it, Gu Ning sent it out. Although it was the time for classes, the news was so hot that everyone focused on it. Therefore, the minute Gu Ning sent her post out, someone discovered it.